I'm Peter from the Daily Rios.
I'm Eric from Longbox Review, and this is episode 28 of Peter and Eric's Legion Project podcast. Hello and welcome to the Legion Project podcast. I am your host, Eric.
And I'm Peter.
And we are here to discuss issue 28 of the third volume of the Legion of Superheroes, otherwise known as the beloved Baxter run. Peter?
Yes. We're back on Zoom and we don't know what to do. No, yeah, what's up?
I was just going to say, Peter, welcome back after our brief hiatus.
Right. Two Tales episodes that people can listen to. One of them featuring annual number 2 of this run, and the other one featuring Star Trek and Legion of Superheroes, which you haven't listened to yet at the time of this recording, because I haven't edited it yet.
Well, you have a really good excuse, I have to say, Peter. I mean, you did just put out your episode 500 of the Daily Rios,
wow.
a nearly 4-hour extravaganza, isn't that right?
Yeah, 338, something like that.
There you go. Yeah. So, congratulations, by the way. I wanted to say that to you face to face now that we can do that over Zoom.
And thank you for participating in that extravaganza.
Oh man, that was so much fun. And I just had I was participating in one of the segments, but I got to go listen to all those others. I'm like, I wanted to be on as part or be part of the conversation on all those other ones too.
Right? Isn't that's like kind of like the best thing about ensemble discussions, right? Mm-hmm. If it makes you go, boy, I wish I was in that conversation right now.
Yeah. Well, I kind of hope that that's what goes on with this show, right? I'm hoping our listeners are like, "Ooh, I wish I could talk to them," or I wish I could interject about this point or whatever. So that's one of the neat things about this opportunity with like with Zoom or other media. I don't know, whatever the proper term is. So, because I've done other conversations on my show over Skype with video. And so it's really nice to be able to see people and interact with them. So it's really cool.
Yeah. You said Baxter series, and it made me think, even in this issue, there's a DC subscription ad, and they call it Deluxe Offset. They say,
right.
Order any of our deluxe offset books, I think they referred to it as. So weird how the name just, why we just stuck with Baxter, but yet they tried so hard to offset printing, and then there's a deluxe checklist, and then they called it deluxe offsetting. They even at one time, I think this was more just for metaphorically speaking, like they were saying hardcover versus soft cover in one of the letter columns I read. So yeah, just so interesting. But yeah, we are back issue 28.
And we should probably just remind folks, since we just released those 2 or will be releasing those 2.
Well, the one is out. The
one is out. So in one of those, the first Tales episode that we did, I forget, did we announce it on that one or
on the second one, on the Star Trek one, it was announced.
Yeah. So I was running a contest where I wanted to give away a bunch of my Tales of the Legion issues that I have, about 25 issues that I have in my collection. So we did a little contest for a while, and a bunch of people entered, and we just wanted to announce here in like the main show, the main Legion Project show, even though we already announced it in the Tales show that Chris Matthews is the winner of those comics. So we just need Chris to send us some information, and I'll get those out to him as soon as I can.
Yeah, if he hasn't already, right?
That's true. That's true.
We're
True.
talking in the past about the future, about the past. So
yes.
anything could happen.
How much Legion can we get then?
Right. Exactly. Right. We're right where we need to be. So this is issue 28. I don't really have anything major for preamble or setup, but I just wanted to say that I'm a little uncertain about what I'm reading, from here on. I know I've read a number of issues coming up, but there's also a part of me that looks at the covers at what we're doing and going, did I read that issue? If I did, I have no memory. So It's a little bit uncharted territory. How are you in terms of where we're going now?
Oh yeah, these are dark waters we're sailing upon, my friend, because I I don't know anything about what's coming up, and I think I've said this before. Until we get to the is this a spoiler? The death of Superboy down the road. Mm-hmm. So that's quite a few issues, I think.
Right, that's 38. Yeah, the dreaded number 38. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So then, yeah. Oh, okay. So I guess it's not that many. I was thinking it was more than that for some reason.
Mm-hmm. And we have things like the Universal Project coming up, and a Millennium Cross tie-in, down the road. All these things that as I look through, I'm like, wow, this is really going to be interesting. And to be totally honest, I felt a little bit like that with this issue. So I'm very curious to jump in and play this one out and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially since this is, we had I mentioned our brief hiatus. This is like a newish start to the overall plot and storylines of the Legion of Superheroes after the Censor Girl saga.
Correct.
That just basically wrapped up in the last few issues. So yeah, here we go with a new plot, a new focus, some continuation of some things leading up to, I believe, in my mind, Peter, I was thinking of this issue as kind of like the prologue to the Universo project, even though we've seen Universo in previous issues. Mm-hmm. He's up to something. We know that.
Right.
And so I think we get some more clues in this issue.
Right. Yeah. We're definitely at the start of, we can kind of think of like the first 27 issues broken up, however, but certainly the Censor Girl stuff from like around issue 14 to 27. That chapter's done. Before that probably was Legion of Superheroes, Legion of Supervillains, plus Lightning Lass, plus whatever, plus the shift of having a new artist with Steve Lytle. Now we have, Greg, so there's a lot of kind of little mini arcs or unofficial mini arcs. And I feel like you're right. We're on this next one, and I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Do you think that this is kind of like the third major chapter of the series so far? I think so far, because it felt like, we started with the Eye for an Eye, right? And that was 5 issues, and then that epilogue Lightning Last story. And then everything after that was like these 1 or 2 issues slowly building up in the background to getting new members at 14, which felt like a new start. But then ultimately that whole new blood thing for me turns into who is Censor Girl, right? Mm-hmm. And it feels like we're going one way, and then all of a sudden we're going another, with some more 1 issues, 2 issues here and there. But the umbrella felt like it was that way. And now for some reason, with issue 27 and the Legion once again decided to vote to keep Censor Girl in the Legion, they were all, yay, that last splash page. And now this one, just something about this one, even though it also is kind of a one-shot story, there's something about it that makes me feel like, okay,
let's move on from this. Is a good starting point, especially for our discussion. Like it feels like
Mm-hmm.
this is a real good starting point. So let's jump in. As always, Eric will do the credits and the synopsis, and then we will jump in with some thoughts about the our general thoughts, and then also thoughts about the covers in relation to the Tales reprint, and then we'll go from there.
All right. So issue 28, The Lost Hero. Paul Levitz is the writer. Greg LaRocque and Mike DiCarlo are listed as artists, with Arn Starr doing an ink assist again, which is, I just find that interesting. John Costanza is letterer, Carl Gafford, colorist Karen Berger, editor, with a cover by Steve Lytle. So what happens this issue? The Xanthu Tribune requests the Legion's help to repair the planet's orbit beacon. So Starboy, Chameleon Boy, Invisible Kid, Dawnstar, and Timberwolf oblige. After, the Tribune asks Starboy to investigate the disappearance of Xanthu's champion, Atmos. At Legion headquarters, Brainiac 5 checks on Dream Girl's injury. Afterwards, Element Lad asks Brainiac 5 if he's going to see Ron Vidar. On Xanthu, the assembled Legionnaires check out Atmos's living quarters, which promptly explodes. Back on Earth, Magnetic Kid is exercising his abilities, wanting to push himself harder than his training academy teachers had. Polar Boy offers to help him and Tellus. Dawnstar tracks Atmos to the Xanthu port, but they cannot find him. So Invisible Kid enters the port invisibly to see what he can find out and confronts some ne'er-do-wells. When they attack him, the rest of the Legionnaires capture them, and one tells them that Atmos was there earlier, but disappeared. At Legion headquarters, White Witch hears a noise from Starboy's quarters and enters to find Dream Girl waking up on his bed. Chief Zendak discusses the disappearance of over a dozen heroes and law enforcement with one of his officers. After Dawnstar is unable to locate Atmos in space, the Legionnaires assemble at Starboy's parents' apartment. A messenger arrives, summoning Starboy to the Tribune, who then tells Starboy that without Atmos, Xanthu needs a champion, and he is it. Element Lad breaks the news to the rest of the Legion, and later, Dream Girl tells him that she dreamed they won't be hearing from Starboy.
The end. Okay, good. Let's go with the covers right away. Let's do that first, because I feel like this is a good. Again, we're not going to be able to play this game much longer, right? We only have one or two more issues, and then that's it. But again, to kind of talk about, a new starting point. Let's before we jump into the general discussion. Covers. The main Baxter by Steve Lytle, who has been on covers, who will be on covers for a while. And then the Tales reprint, issue 353 from a year later. Pat Broderick and John Beatty are the artists and inker on that one. What do you think? What do you like? What's your thoughts? Take it away.
Well, I'd also add when I was looking this up, Anthony Tollin, I guess, did the colors for the main cover, which I don't think we've consistently noted that over time, but that I will try to do that in the future.
Yeah,
but
to be fair, they don't usually.
That's true.
You have to go to like certain sites that really dig in to find it out. Yeah, I always assume incorrectly that it's the artist that's coloring it, but that's not always the same.
Yeah. Well, okay, so these are interesting. I like both for different reasons, of course. I generally like the issue 28 cover just a little better, just because it's action oriented. You got Starboy featured prominently, as the largest figure on the cover, so to speak, even though Invisible Kid's like right there in our face in the bottom corner. But so I feel like thematically it fits better with the story overall, even though it is depicting one particular moment in the story with the like I mentioned in the synopsis, the destruction of Atmos's apartment or headquarters or whatever that thing is. Plus, I just really dig the dual color thing here, the blues and the black. Well, I guess three, black and white. So it's basically a monochromatic cover with one color thrown in there. So I kind of dig that. And then you get your Tales cover with a character featuring a character that we don't actually see. We see an image of him in issue 28, but so uh, but it's a very striking design of Atmos, right? Because he's got this weird see-through body parts of his body that are see-through, which is a really interesting visual for the character. But it does also, again, it features a moment sort of in the story where the Legionnaires are searching for him, and the Dawn Star in space thing that I mentioned earlier. So but more importantly, it's done by Pat Broderick, which is when I first started collecting the Legion of Superheroes, his style, his work, his brief work on the series is kind of what I was introduced to. I had read a few issues before that I purchased, but in my thinking back on my collecting my early collecting days, and the Legion, I immediately think of Pat Broderick and those few issues that he did. And so seeing him again doing a cover, just makes me long nostalgically for those old days where I was just getting into Legion. Everything was new and exciting, and I had no idea who all these characters were, but I was eager to learn about them. And it just brings up a lot of that all those old feelings, I guess, about the series.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Yeah, yeah, he's such an interesting character, Atmos, visually. We'll talk about it inside the book as well. But for a Greg LaRocque designed character, um, I think it's damn good. I think it's interesting to play with like the negative space, the empty space, the invisible space, whatever you want to call it. Slap on the interlac A right there on the chest, just like Element Lad and some of the other ones. But also, what does that do for an artist that now, like Pat Broderick has to draw Dawnstar behind him and the wings and everything else? And does it make sense? Not really, but and we haven't really seen him physically like use his powers and all that other stuff. But I like the design. I'm a little put off by some of the background characters on the Tales issue. Dawnstar, the little foreshort, the way the perspective of them flying, some of it looks a little janky to me. But I will say, it's Pat Broderick's style. I think he's not so worried so much about being 100% realistic. I think around this time he was either doing Lords of the Ultra Realm or ready to do Lords of the Ultra Realm, and he was on Firestorm for a little bit here and there. That's where I kind of know his artwork from. But yeah, the minute I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, I didn't even have to look at the logo. I was like, or the signature, like, it's Pat Broderick. Totally get it. And it's kind of nice that Atmos gets a cover spotlight. That's the cool thing about comparing these two covers. One of them coming out a year later, they can play different moments within the book and show different things. And you're right, it's not wrong. That's exactly what they're doing in this issue. The search for Atmos. That's exactly what's going on. I did write in my notes that it looked like Invisible Kid's costume, even though that is the way it's designed. It's a little the black X. It looks a little different from kind of his normal appearance. And I wrote in my notes, it looked like Professor X's costume that he got when he came back from Secret Wars planet. He wore this ugly yellow costume when he was walking, with a black X on his chest, specially designed by John Romita Jr., which was like right when I was starting to read the X-Men. And I was like, oh, that looks like Professor X flying there. So,
I did not know that. I had no idea that Professor X had such a costume.
Yeah, it's around Uncanny X-Men 180 or 181, whichever one they return back to. From, like I said, from the Secret Wars planet. And he didn't wear it long. He was trying to be he was trying to be a general alongside his soldiers instead of always being in a chair, so
Oh, okay.
there it is.
Yeah.
I'm showing Eric there. You can see that
Yeah.
X.
I see what you're saying there. Yeah.
Yeah. To the Baxter cover, which I really like, um, Todd Klein apparently designed the destroyed logo from his website. I saw that.
Oh, nice.
I
I didn't
love.
even mention that. That's one of the things I did like about this too, because everything, the even the what do you call that, the little corner box
Mhm.
with the DC logo and the issue number and the price and all that stuff. Everything is just being blown apart or scattered. I really like that concept.
Yeah, that's such a comic book thing for covers, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah. And the you talked about the different values of blue on the cover, which is so awesome. And just the backlighting, right, from the point of the explosion behind them,
Yes, good point.
and how it's creating shadows on their faces, and the highlights at the back of their bodies, and just the detail. Invisible Kid's flight ring. Starboy has a flight ring. The destruct the debris, all of it, the muscle anatomy. I mean, it's it's good. It's a good cover. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely picking the Baxter one with a nod of appreciation to the Tales.
Yeah, same.
Speaking of the Tales, just real quick, I'll throw this out. Um, Pages 10 and 11 are omitted from the reprint. So when you read through the Baxter issues, whatever 10 and 11 is in the Baxter, which is the whole Magnetic Kid Polar Boy
Yeah.
stuff, they completely dropped that from the reprint, but didn't change the numbering on the pages. So it jumps from pages 9 through
To
12. Like,
12.
yeah, so like when you're looking at the back, you're like, wait a minute, where are these two pages? So clearly, if someone looked at that, they might have felt ripped off. And this is also the first Tales issue that is $1 as opposed to 75 cents. So DC moving to dollar books in '87, which felt a little early, but maybe it's because these issues were longer than they needed to be. But I'd have to look to see what other titles. I thought the dollar thing came later in the '80s, but maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was
Yeah.
'87. General thoughts? General thoughts about Legion of Superheroes number 28, The Lost Hero.
Yeah, I was very curious how our conversation would go, Peter. Because I kind of felt this issue was a bit light in plot. And as people heard, me going back and forth. But this is a usual thing for for Paul Levitz's plotting style, is that he likes to go here, go back here, go back, go back, go back, go back. So like this ping pong match of a plot issue. But there's really not a whole lot to the whole search for Atmos. It's a lot of nothing, really. They do make a little headway into it, but there's not a whole lot there. But I do like, again, we were talking about new beginnings or a new chapter or whatever. I do like that we're getting into some new territory, and getting little tidbits. Like I said, the reveal by Chief Zendek, of the people, the heroes and law enforcement that are have disappeared. We're going to lead up to something. That's going to lead up to something, of course. But really, the meat of the story to me, in this issue, is the whole Dream Girl Starboy situation that just begs for more, and which is a great way to work its way through the issue. But in the end, we get that reveal. Dream Girl's what do you call those things? Premonitions that she has about the situation. So it was a great way to end the issue, because it just really makes you want to read the next one and find out what's the next thing that happens between these two excuse me, between these two characters.
Oh, we're not getting that. Doesn't it end with the end at the end?
Well, yeah, but this is a Legion of Superheroes comic book. It's synonymous with soap opera drama. Come on.
Yeah,
They got
but
to return to it eventually.
okay, eventually, maybe, or through some other way, but we've played that dance, we've danced that dance and
Oh,
come
that's
away,
yeah.
without a partner, so like we know. I've pretty much was like, yeah, this. I'm very curious about it, but I'm not putting my hopes that we're going to learn anything more than what we learned in this issue because
Ah,
Levitz has done that, right? Like, how many other
true.
things have kind of been like, okay, he may have it, Levitz may have it in his multiple notebooks of where I left a relationship. But if I get back to it, I'm going to need a letter writer to remind me to go back to it, or,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, in a way, I actually felt like this was the unfortunate ending to a number of things that we've been seeing in the Baxter run. Um, whether it was the two of them, Starboy always looking like the lost puppy boyfriend because Dream Girl was deputy leader, or she was more worried about the mission at hand, whatever was going on at the time. And then that moment where Quizlet bumps into Dream Girl at a club and she's in the arms of another man while they're dancing. Um, and then in the background, they apparently made up, whatever issue that was, and then everything was kind of hunky dory. And now we get this issue. I know it was speculated from, I think one of the letter writers about this issue said something like, oh, that must be why Dream Girl was trying to create a situation where Starboy would be pushed away because she knew this was coming up. So it's kind of saying, let me create this, let me play along with whatever and step out on my man because I know something bad. Maybe she didn't know the details, but so I don't know how much what you think about that. Again, I don't remember if a letter writer said that or if I thought of that. I'd have to check on my larger notes, but
Well, that's very interesting because two things on that. Two thoughts I have on this. One is how very again uh, uh, soap opera y that a character would go to these extremes to set up this situation, but at the same time, too, Dream Girl's done this before. In Legion history,
yeah,
she sets up this whole because she had a premonition. She sets up this whole situation with the Legion, and I forget the issue now. I think it's some
it was her
adventure
first
comics.
appearance, right?
Was it?
With the robot duplicates, and she changes lightning lass's
Yeah, I think
powers. Yeah.
Adventure 317. I think is the one I'm thinking about. But she basically is trying to or my because I did a lot of reading of some adventure comics in relation to this. So this issue. So I'm not sure if I'm getting a couple confused, but she was trying to expel a bunch of people from the Legion because they were going to get killed otherwise, right?
Right,
And so,
right.
yeah, that totally makes sense in
Yeah.
terms of who Dream Girl is, or was anyway. Because I honestly I don't think of that Dream Girl as that kind of a character anymore. She's much more assertive, much more confident, and has more leadership qualities. So I can't really buy her going or using subterfuge in this way to elicit an end to this. I know it just seems kind of
Yeah.
off to me based on how she's being portrayed these days.
Yeah, and I think it's just the the cheating, quote unquote cheating aspect that I feel like she's put in. Obviously, not this whole Atmos thing. That would be way too. She'd be a villain if she was behind all that kind of stuff. But just being in a situation where she would be caught, especially by someone like Quizlet, but any Legionnaire, so that it would trickle back to Starboy, which would then further their relationship drama, and then to the point where maybe she was hoping they would break up before this adventure because she knew that he was going to he was going to have to leave the team because she even says right at the end, being a precog means you get hurt twice, right?
Yeah,
So she knew
yeah.
the outcome one way or another, even if not necessarily the specifics. I guess my larger point to it is, yeah, you're right. I think we're not in that Silver Age mode, where they do crazy things like that. with the Legion, but with her relationship, which is the one thing that I feel like she feels like she has control of, but it's the, especially I think with the Legion she's far more centered, but in her relationship life, because there's high emotion and drama, and you're dealing with, one other person. Like, I feel like that's where she is her weakest, as a character. And that's, I think it was shown here a couple times too, where she deflects the conversation with White Witch. She doesn't want to talk about it because she's trying to say, oh, what do you know, virgin White Witch, against what I know about love. But really, it's not about that. She probably knows that, number one, White Witch is right. Number two, that she has no words for what's going on, and she's just deflecting. Same thing with Brainiac 5, that scene where she's it's constant deflection. So, let me backtrack, because these are like more specific thoughts. Generally, though, I agree with you. The first read of it, I was like, wow, that was sort of okay. Let me read it. It was fine issue, fine production, everything. I liked it. Read it again, thought about previous Starboy issues, and thought, no, this actually really makes sense for Starboy. Letter writers were constantly like, okay, these characters need more spotlight. Block needs more spotlight. Starboy needs more spotlight. All right, Paul Levitz gives Starboy a spotlight and then takes him off the board. Like, I feel like it's right, especially if you think back to, since we're on Zoom, I'll just pull it up, right? Did you think about this issue?
Oh, yeah. I read that one too.
Yeah, issue 306. I only read it in the last day or two, and I was going to email you and tell. I'm glad you read it, because I was going to read it, and then I'm like, oh my God, we have so much homework in this episode already. If I tell him to read something else, he's going to kill me. Issue 306 from December, cover date December 83, special spotlight on Starboy, which is him and Wildfire talking about Starboy's life, right, during a leader election. And he's talking about how unlucky he is, right? He's unlucky about his mutant. Well, I don't know if he's a mutant, but his powers as a baby. He's unlucky because even when he joined the Legion, he then had a mission that totally, his powers went away, and then he got really hurt and was off the Legion for like a year. Then he kills somebody, and then again he's really off the Legion. Like, just constant bad luck, bad luck, bad luck. Well, if you're a longtime reader, isn't this just more bad luck?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're a newer reader, maybe it doesn't resonate the same way. But reading it a second time, and then I went back and said, oh, the lost hero, right? It's Atmos is the lost hero, but so is Starboy, right? We're losing Starboy. So suddenly this issue, it's not like it's like one of those, like, I kind of almost think of it in like that Timberwolf issue, that one-off issue that Timberwolf got to do when he went to the planet Lethal and was executing Karate Kid's will, and it's just sort of a light character study. Under another writer, it might have been a little more poetic or whatever, but it's Paul Levitz, and he has a job to do, and he's not Claremont. Even though it is soap opera, he's not high emotion soap opera. Right? Yeah. It's sort of like a soap opera on one of the other channels. Like, it's not an ABC soap opera. It's like CBS soap opera or NBC or something like that. I don't know. I'm confusing my soap operas. So the second time I read it, suddenly there were a lot of things that kind of stuck out that I was like, okay, yeah, it made me appreciate it a little bit more. And you know what? After all those issues of Sensor Girl, I don't need an issue to be so amazing or perfect, It just, it's nice just to read an issue of Legion.
Yeah. My assessment of the issue, my initial assessment of the issue is certainly not a mark against it. It's just that, I guess maybe coming off of some of those more powerful issues that we've talked about in more recent episodes, plus just the general drama of who is Sensor Girl, right?
Yeah.
And then to get this little story, this little sort of self-contained story, has a very different tone, or I had a very different reaction to it, is all.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I certainly enjoy it, and obviously some of the things that you just mentioned I picked up on as well, though not everything. So that's one of the things I love about our discussions. That, man, you make me feel like the issue, there's much more, the issue is much more fuller
Yeah.
because of the things that you bring up. So
Whether it's just me fabricating stuff or
yeah, but it sounds good
yeah.
either way.
The other aspect that I really like about this, and this is something I love about sort of Silver Age Legion, even though it's played not for a joke, but like whenever you go to one of the members' planets in the Silver Age, they always try to like top whatever kind of weirdness or wackiness goes on Earth, right? Like, so it's not like if there's if they go to a planet, another person's planet, there's waterfalls, but the water, instead of water, it's gold, and oh, we have buildings that instead of going up, we build them on clouds and they go down, like just wackiness, right? But there was a lot of cultural stuff about Xanthru in this issue that I really liked. And it wasn't that extreme level that you get sometimes in other comics. It was just, okay, I love that it's a colony planet. I love that it's the founding families, which I assume the founding families of the colony itself are the ones that rule Xanthru. The whole thing about there's only one hero on the planet, and they give him whatever they want, a building and fun probably and whatever. There was stuff in that aspect that really made me appreciate this issue, because you get to learn about Starboy and his planet, but it's not so like in your face. It's kind of like, oh, you got to read the dialogue and read the captions. Yeah. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Speaking of that, this might be a good time to bring this in. Like I said, I read a few Adventure Comics issues because I wanted to see, okay, what when did Starboy come into the Legion? When did he get expelled for a while for killing that one guy? And then I think we talked about this before too. They had a stint. He and Dream Girl had a stint with the Legion of Substitute Heroes. So I was really curious about that. And then it's like, oh, well, when did Dream Girl appear and how did their relationship start? So I read a few issues, quite a few, just basically just kind of thumbing through them as well. But one of the things I'll just mention here, and maybe I'll get to some of this other stuff later. In Adventure Comics 282, I think it's his first appearance. He tells Superboy or Lana Lang, because it's really, the story in that issue is really about Lana Lang trying to get Superboy to notice her, and she's using Starboy to do that. It's really, really stupid Silver Age stuff. But Starboy does say that the people of Xanthu built him no kidding, a Starboy laboratory. And so I was thinking, is that so? You have, there's a very clear through line between that issue and this one with Xanthu, Atmos's apartment or whatever that thing is, right? And so it's like, did Paul read that issue and he's like, oh, I'll just recreate that here, It's like, or is it just one of those brilliant comic book coincidences?
Right. I think I might have talked about this before. We talked about how, like, and clearly we're giving examples here in this episode. Whenever we read an issue, it's always great to be able to, like, well, let me go back and read an older comic that might have a relation, to it. So I read the Legion 306, and then for something we're going to do later in the episode, I read Shadowlass's first two appearances, those two issues with the Fatal Five, just because I've never read them, and I had one of the books in my collection, so I was like, yay, I get to read one more issue from my collection. But I've been trying to go back to read the Legion in order, but I don't get to it quite often. I've only read their first 5 appearances. And I don't remember the last time I read it. But the last one I read apparently was Adventure Comics 202 because I had notes on that and I was like, oh, that's good. I don't actually have to read it. I could just look at it. But it's so interesting to see that, like, I'm trying to slowly work my way through like the development of, who showed up first and what Legion terminology. The thing I love about Starboy, about that issue, and maybe this speaks to why Starboy is such a favorite of so many people, even though what we're reading, he has been basically absent, more or less, or a background character. If my trivia is right, Starboy is the first Legionnaire outside of the Trinity to be shown on a cover, because he shows up in their 5th appearance. The Legion of Superheroes have only had 4 issues before Starboy's first appearance. But it was either Lightning Boy, Cosmic Kid, Saturn Girl. They were on the cover, or they weren't featured at all because it was just a generic, like Superboy fighting Kryptonite rock people, or whatever. But in this issue, the one you're talking about, I thought it was fun trivia. Yes, Starboy is the first Legionnaire after the Trinity to be featured on a cover. So I was like, oh, look at that. See, he has a very special, even though he's like the 7th member or the 13th member, like whatever, however you want to count membership, based on either actual physical appearance in a comic, but then also the membership number. He was the first Legionnaire outside of the Trinity to be seen on a cover. So it's like, wow, that's a very cool position for a character to be.
I also noticed that looking through those issues that I did, flipping through them, that he would often have an appearance in the issue or be on the roll call, but then have very little to do with the story. He just might show up in a panel, and yet he was prominently mentioned. So I don't know, was Starboy like supposed to be like the star of the Legion? He's like the breakout star or something back then. I don't know. It's very bizarre because originally Starboy came to the Legion in that issue, Adventure Comics issue, and he had not only basically the powers of Superboy, but then a few extra or weird takes on Superboy's powers, right? And that continued for a while throughout his appearances with the Legion. Although I didn't feel like they capitalized on his abilities in that way. It was, if they needed him to, I don't know, use his invulnerability or something to move the plot forward, they would. But generally, what the focus wasn't really on his abilities and how that pertained to the adventure of that issue. But then, and this maybe neither here nor there, but eventually, his basically his density powers is what took over, right? And they made him a singular power hero, just like all the other ones, essentially.
Right.
So at some point, somebody was like, "Hey, wait a minute! All these other Legionnaires all have one ability, except for Superboy. Why is the Starboy guy have the same powers as Superboy? Why, Anyway, so I thought that was really interesting that they brought him in such a way, and then basically took all those powers away. But it was done, as far as I could tell, off screen, off panel. And suddenly, there was no mention of this change in him, but he would start to use his density powers exclusively a lot more. And then I think it's in that Legion of Superheroes issue number 306 that you mentioned. That's where we get the backstory, as far as I could tell in my research.
Or we get all the research, all the backstories put together.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The whole origin about, passing through a comet and getting Superboy's powers, which harkens back to his first appearance, but then adding on the layer, if it hadn't already, about, oh no, he was actually born with his mass-inducing powers. It was just that the other ones well, I like what 306 said, because he was born with those powers and then caused an accident with his parents' floating observatory out in space, came crashing down to Earth, they managed to escape. Well, then suddenly he gets put into research mode, right? And he felt like a freak. So it was kind of nice in that 306 where he says, I felt like I was treated. I felt like I was a freak. So when he gets those Superboy powers, you can almost understand why he wouldn't use his
Oh, yeah.
his Starboy powers, right? Because he even says in that 306, like when I did actually have to use them, I barely knew how to use them, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting character thing, and gives Starboy something a little more than just being someone who can make things heavy, like
Hmm.
and again, I don't know if it was 306 that layered all that personality and characterization on top of him, what he was like before it. I'd have to. I'm not about right. I don't want to read every Starboy appearance. I just read what I read. That was enough. Um, but yeah, I totally. It's such an interest. Plus, what do you do with a character like Starboy when you already have Superboy?
Mm.
What happens when Ultra Boy comes about? What happens when
Hmm.
Mon-El's there? What are you going to do with that character? You got to give him something different. His name is Starboy. It makes sense. Give him some different powers.
Although, so here's another bit of trivia from my reading. I know we're not really talking about the issue, but
It's a Starboy issue.
it's
It's
yeah,
a
no,
Starboy
it's
centric issue. This is all part of it.
his history is just I just found it really fascinating, you
Yeah.
know. So in Adventure Comics 317, this is Dreamgirl's first appearance. Um, uh, it's revealed that he has these density powers, at least as far as I could tell. Because in his first appearance, there's no mention
Right.
of those
Right.
powers or the observatory or anything.
Right.
So it says, this is a quote, born close to the stars, has by their radiation evolved the power to draw induced mass from the stars. What the hell does that mean?
I guess it's no different than like say like a solar being who, like Superman, he has to stand near a sun to get their
Mm-hmm.
stuff, like but I mean on the flip side of that, he he's using the mass from stars to temporarily make things heavy. What happens to the star?
And exactly. That's what I mean. It's like, how is he affecting gravitational pull and orbits and all this? He's a danger to society.
Now you have to imagine if he's making a gun heavy, he only has to make it maybe, you know, let me just make it 900 pounds. That's probably not going to do something
Yeah, yeah.
to the sun. But like in that issue 306, when he's a kid, a little baby, and he zaps the observatory, he said, now maybe it was hyperbole, but he said, what happens to an observatory when it's suddenly 400 million tons or 4 million tons, something like that. I was like, okay, that's a lot.
Mm.
Isn't that's got to be a lot? I think it was 4. Um, yeah, I did have that in my notes. Now, the flip side, to go back to the issue a little bit and what I learned culturally, this whole notion, and this does kind of play out even in some of those early stories, of Xanthu being a culture that is really based around like astronomy
Mm-hmm.
and space and blah, blah, blah. What I liked about that aspect is it makes sense for him to have that power, number one. Maybe it also makes sense because he would have a understanding of how to use his powers based on his parents' research, based on his culture. Maybe he understands how to. I might be giving him more credit than he deserves, but he's not just pulling from one star; he's pulling from 50
Mm-hmm.
stars. Although there's only really one close by. But when you're out in space, who knows?
Yeah, well,
So you're drawing just a fraction from these stars than just.
mm-hmm.
Um,
But that begs the question too. If it's multiple stars, we're really getting into the weeds here. Uh, uh, stars are so far apart.
I know. I know.
If that is indeed what he can do, that's amazing because we're talking light years of distance that he can pull this mass from these stars. That's
Well,
amazing.
I mean, we talked remember when we did the Tales issue about the Justice League versus the Fatal Five, right? And Starboy is featured prominently in there, and how he is the one that saves the sun by creating a black hole or something like that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he creates a black hole. Like that's crazy power. And I
Yeah.
feel like in 1986 this conversation wouldn't be happening about Starboy because he's just Starboy at that point, but we've read some stuff now after that, and the cultural aspect connected me to the whole idea that came out later that his costume eventually became a map of the multiverse, right?
Yeah.
Remember when that whole thing played out? And he was showing up in the Justice Society series that was um, Jeff Johns was the writer, Dale Eaglesham was the artist, but Alex Ross also was like a contributor to like plots and things like that. And we had a Starman in there. He was Starman, but he was this weird version of Starman. And that's the whole thing where suddenly you realize, oh, he needs medication for a personality thing that he has, blah blah blah. But his costuming being part, like it connects back again to this whole cultural thing. Like it's amazing how, like you said, are these writers really going backwards and going, oh, his society is all about astronomy. His costuming is a map. Is basically a map of the universe. Why can't it be a map of the multiverse? Like the whole thing of it just really makes me go, that is just so amazing. So who knows what you could spec. This is headcanon. Maybe the costume has something to do with it, right? Like maybe it's a reflection of the galaxy, and he's like, oh, let me just pull a little from Polaris and Antares and Vega, and even though they're
his costume's a wormhole.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
A funnel, a tunnel. I don't know. Anyway, again, giving way too much.
Mm-hmm.
When you start to think about what he's able to do, he doesn't just make things heavy. He gives them mass. There's just so many interesting things that could be done. It also, to go back to the issue again, I thought it was interesting. I had a couple notes about Atmos and his powers. I think a lot of what I thought about Atmos prior to reading this issue for this episode, I thought he was kind of like a futuristic version of Firestorm. He looks like him. He's got that, thin head, just like Firestorm has fire. Mm-hmm. And when he uses his power, sometimes you get those like atomic circlet things that are very Firestorm-esque, and even the costuming, he has negative space, whereas Firestorm has very billowy sleeves, So just all of it kind of was like, I don't know, just something about it was like, oh, so is he more based on nuclear stuff? Is he based on atom things like that? But then as I'm going through, read your comics, kids, because you'll learn some stuff. I was like, okay, what is Atmos? What is that name? I don't know if you looked it up. It's an abbreviation of atmosphere. And I thought, duh, of course, because Atmos is basically a unit of pressure, which is everything Starboy is, right? If you think about it, you're like creating mass and pressure and just gravitational forces, maybe if you want to think of it that way. So, and in my notes to that very first Starboy appearance that you read, one of the villains that Starboy sends he needs Superboy's help to find two criminals from Xanthu, right? One of them's like, I'm going to shoot you with my atomic ray. Now that's a very futuristic thing, atomic ray. Great. But then I was like, ooh, atomic Atmos, atomic Xanthu, right? Like, yeah, they would have atomic rays, not solar guns.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like again, to play those connections. So I think that's why, very long story short, I started to appreciate this issue more and more, because as I kept going backwards, I just found my headcanon stuff that connected back. But some of it really speaks to, I think could speak to this issue. Paul Levitz is a Legion master and has many, many books. They reference it in the letter columns all the time. So somewhere in one of those notes could have been, oh yeah, by the way, Starboy, planets, astronomy, stars, atmosphere, Atmos, great name. Let's create a character. You know what I mean? So, yeah, good stuff. This is good. Basically what we're learning is we get to learn a lot about Legion lore just by reading one issue, which is awesome.
That, I have to say, that's been one of the more enjoyable aspects about doing this examination of this series, is that I do get to do this homework and go back to those especially those early issues, and discover, because I haven't read a huge chunk of the Adventure Comics
Same.
Legion appearances. So I get to pull out my Silver Age omnibuses and read those things and learn more stuff. So yeah, this is awesome.
Okay, so let's talk a little more specifically about the issue itself. What thoughts
Finally.
are what thoughts or ideas did you think about, or is there anything you want to kick us off with?
Well, okay, so let's just start with the beginning. I found this very curious. It's just a little thing, and that's just it. I think this issue is filled with a lot of really, I won't necessarily, well, I was going to say interesting things, but filled with a lot of things that could be interesting. How about that? I found the assembled legionnaires at Xanthu, um, uh, their complaint about why are we here to be kind of funny. I don't know. Because it almost seems like they have more important. They feel like they have more important things to do than to help out this planet, Starboy's home world. It kind of goes back to how the Legion are really just kind of mean to each other at times, and this is I mean low key passive aggressiveness here on their part, but there's
It's not like they haven't done this before. It's not like
exactly.
they've restored Daxam. They whatever issue with the controllers they were fixing. I don't know, some flood thing or whatever. I mean, they do this constantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, and it seems like, okay, now that you mentioned that, some of that stuff happened on Earth, right? Because the explosions, the things that were, the supposed terrorist attacks that were happening on Earth, they didn't seem to bat an eye to help out those facilities. But, oh, Xanthu, we got more important things to do.
Yeah, that was a little weird too. And maybe I thought it was because of the makeup of of you know the people that but it was coming wasn't it coming from Chameleon Boy? Yeah. Or
Well, I think
no.
Invisible Kid also makes a comment about it too. Yeah, on page 3, this is a simple chore. Surely our powers were needed more elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's just in just a few pages, it's mentioned a couple times by different characters. So I thought that was just an odd focus, I guess.
I didn't know I wrote that in my notes too, and I just thought that was yeah, Cam questions about why they're there. And I wrote, yeah, because you always do this. It's the one thing I don't like, right? I've talked about like, oh, they're just helping out because nature is going wild and oh look, some animal got stuck in a hole, so they gotta, and they're like, oh, we like these missions because it's we get to just use our powers for the good of society. And now they're kind of like, so what if this observatory falls? Where's your hero, Xanthu? Let him do it. Yeah, that was a little
Yeah.
odd. That was.
Yeah.
I do have not a theory, but I have a comment about not only that, but a few other things that I'm going to save for a little bit. That
Okay.
I'll save for a little bit because there's other moments too of things that happen that on a second and third read I was like, oh, maybe it was because of this. I did like but first of all, it's Invisible Kid, Dawnstar. We haven't seen them for a while. Starboy, Paul Levitt's using characters that have been off the grid that weren't featured in the Who is Sensor Girl mystery. So it's like we're getting this whole other team. Even Chameleon Boy, to some degree, hasn't really been seen in action other outside of maybe like those controller stories.
Mm-hmm.
Timberwolf is obvious because Paul Levitz likes Timberwolf. So it was a weird. Did you find it was a weird mix of Legionnaires? Like they didn't quite gel. And we even get that scene later between Dawnstar and Timberwolf, which, they're kind of flirting.
Yeah.
Chameleon Boy notices it. But in my notes, I wrote, yeah, that actually is kind of what happened. Like when you have a large group of friends, but then suddenly two of them are together, but there's two that don't normally meet
Mm-hmm.
up.
Mm-hmm.
And you get like a weird tension. And I doubt it plays out, but it was kind of fun to see because they're both so oblivious to love or whatever. And they both are connected very strongly with another Legionnaire.
Right.
So that when they finally have this moment, she's all like, tee, and he's all like, duh, I thought it
Yeah.
allowed Levitz to play around with this mix of Legionnaires that don't normally join. I don't know if you felt that.
Yeah. I did appreciate that. I love it when he does that. My problem generally is that he likes to include like Chameleon Boy is a great example because while he hasn't had a whole lot of like spotlight or meaty plot lines recently, he is constantly there. He's talking to Brainiac 5 or he's in the background. He's always there. He always seems to be on a mission. But why not, put I don't know, somebody else. So it's I mean really the answer is that they quite often put the Legionnaires whose abilities better serve the plot
Sure.
in with or on the mission, I should say. So that makes sense. But yeah, I agree. It was like why these Legionnaires? How did their powers? How would Dawnstar's powers contribute to repairing this orbit beacon? I mean, that just what?
She can fly in space unaided. Did you notice that it took me one or two reads, but they all have their trans suits activated?
Yes, I didn't. I thought that was a nice artistic touch that they actually remembered that they have those suits,
right,
and actually showing them in space.
Right. I just thought it was an artistic thing until I realized she doesn't have one. That's because she doesn't need one.
Mm-hmm.
She can fly in space, and I was like, oh yeah. So there could be your answer for why Dawnstar. Plus, Greg LaRocque loves Dawnstar.
Yes, I was going to say that's probably the reason that Levitz threw her into the plot in the first place.
Yeah, he gets one more. Look, another right on page. Look, we have page numbers 23, a whole Dawnstar splash page. This is like any chance he can get to create artwork with her. So,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's reminiscent. That image on page 23 is reminiscent of that Pat Broderick cover too. Mm-hmm. It's a very similar pose. You've got the circles emanating from her for her tracking ability, and even that weird the light coming off her forehead with the weird energy dispersion at the top. That's kind of depicted in that Pat Broderick cover a little differently, but. And I don't know, Peter, have we ever seen her powers depicted her tracking ability depicted this way?
Maybe not. I think they're so nebulous that you can, it's sort of artist choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just another artistic thing I noticed in this issue, and I think I've noticed it before and it didn't really register. I will say I really like how LaRocque shows us the backsides of the Legionnaires, so we get to see the back of their costumes, instead of always the front side. It's just a minor detail, mm-hmm. but he likes to turn his characters around and show us different perspectives on their anatomy. I think as an artist, I would think that would be really cool, even though it doesn't do anything for the story itself. These artists, churning out these issues one a month or maybe even more, depending on the artist, right? They gotta have some fun. So they probably don't want to draw the same 3/4 angle of a character's face every issue, right? So yeah. I appreciate that.
There were a couple things artistically that I really liked. There's a worm's eye view shot of the headquarters, I think it is. What page is that? Right there on page 5. Just that worm's eye view, like looking upward on.
Oh yeah.
It's just a small panel. It's just a tiny panel. It means mm-hmm. nothing. But
and then right next to it, a bird's eye view of Brainy's lab
to show how big it is. The scope of it.
There's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, because I've talked about before that Greg LaRocque's design sense is not as refined, mm-hmm. if, to use lack of a better word, than say even Steve Light, certainly Keith Giffen, but he stretched a little in this issue. I wish mm-hmm. Xanthu was a little. It's fine, even like the Tribune's costume design feels very Kirby-ish. It gets the point across. I even wrote in my notes that the combination of LaRocque, DiCarlo, and Arnstar, the inking is very fluid. It's curvy. It's just got a lot of curves to it. The highlights on Starboy's costume, just some other places where the inking work in the face or the muscle structure on the bodies is the lines are squiggly and circly and rounded, and I and for this issue it worked for me in ways, and sometimes when it doesn't work before.
I would say this may be LaRocque's best issue artistically. And maybe it's because, he's feeling much more comfortable. Maybe he and DiCarlo are just starting to really gel together now, after working for several issues. So yeah, I agree. I think it's really cool. And speaking of curvy lines, that scene with Brainiac 5 and Dream Girl in his lab, lots of curls there. Very, very nicely done. Her hair, I mean, in several of those panels.
Well, to play on that too, White Witch on page 16, she's usually always drawn with her hair very straight, very down, and then there's that shot of her using her powers, and it's billowy.
Ooh, yeah.
And that's not a look you often see with White Witch. At least when I saw this version, I was like, oh, I love that.
Yeah,
I love
that's
that
a nice
shot.
touch.
Yeah. I mean, she is the sister of Dream Girl, who's supposed to be the hottest thing in the galaxy, so it only makes sense. And then the very last shot of Dream Girl at the end, hitting that, it's like right out of a DC romance comic.
Oh, yes. I thought the same thing.
Yeah. The little tear, but her hair there, the shading they're trying to do. It's, the little shading work on her face is not as, if it stands out a little bit because we don't really see it throughout the rest of the issue. And under a different inker, it might be more subtle, but I like that shot of her. I really do. Yeah. There's a sense of, like in her costuming too, like her costume is like metal. You really get the sense of like metal in this issue. Yeah. Can I go? Let's talk about Dream Girl a little bit here. So that scene you mentioned with Element Lad and Brainiac 5 and Dream Girl, I thought it was fun that they are basically having the conversation that we've had about Dream Girl. Brainiac 5 says, if that woman ever stops playing the fool and wasting her mind, who knows what she could accomplish.
That's high praise from Brainiac 5.
I just thought that was everything we've kind of talked about. And like, I've had this new appreciation of the character, and I think you have as well. And in that scene where, first of all, I love that whether it was Levitz or LaRocque, showing Dream Girl without makeup, and then the first thing she does after she gets checked up is put that damn makeup right back on again. And it's almost like LaRocque went in that panel on page 5, the fourth panel where Brainiac 5 is inspecting her. It almost looks like you can see a little bit of, not, I guess, wrinkles in the face. Yeah. Until she puts that makeup on, and then she feels like she's herself again.
Yeah. Well, and that sixth panel, fifth panel, where so he's used his probe or whatever, and it hurts her, right? And then he says, "You can go dancing with Starboy again and try to damage them if you like." And it's a little Brainy's being a little turd there, but he's turning away from her, and what we see of Dream Girl is her sitting there. Her face is almost completely covered by her hair and shadow. Like, boy, that his comment just really, I think, struck home. And she appears, very isolated there, even though he's right next to her, in the panel. But she's just sitting there by herself, like I said, isolated. And the emotional weight of that comment, I think, is so deftly illustrated in this real simple image of her sitting there. And then we get the turn in that next panel that you talked about with her. Brainy, Starboy's away. And then she's putting the makeup on. Do you know anyone else who would enjoy my company? and she's totally put on that person the personality, but persona that outward persona that she likes to use. But here, sometimes I think she's using it to manipulate others to get her way, or just sometimes just to make people uncomfortable for whatever reason. But here, I think it's very much she's putting up a facade to protect herself, so
Yeah,
she doesn't have to feel that moment.
or she's feeling vulnerable because she was injured from the whole Who is Sense a Girl battle with Fatal Five, and um, some of it could be that deflection that we see with White Witch later, because she knows what's going to happen by the end. She's read page 23 or whatever page number that is by the end, and she's like, oh yeah, I know what's going on. There's so in the musical La Cage aux Folles, not to here's a total tangent. There's a song called "Put a Little More Mascara On," and the person who sings it is basically a drag star. And there's a lyric on here where he says, I apply one great stroke of mascara to my rather limp upper lash, and I can cope again. There's hope again. I put a little more mascara on. Where's another? When everything slides down the old tubes again, and when my self-esteem has begun to drift, I strap on my fake boobs again and literally give myself a lift. Like, I feel like that's what Dreamgirl's doing here, right? She needs her armor in some ways, And then like you said, she flirts with Brainy. She threatens Element Lad with running against him in the next election. And I found it awfully playful. I mean, in other times it seemed confrontational, but this one, knowing what she's going through, I realized, okay, this is her way. It's just her way, and Levitz has honed this, and I think I hope it's a reminder that she's not the vain character that she might have come across in those early appearances. Just like Saturn Girl was not the Iron Maiden that we knew her to be. She was Saturn Girl, And this is another, in that larger thought that I have, it's another kind of element to it. I felt like in many ways, I guess I'm going to go into it. I felt like Starboy and Dreamgirl in this issue switched, where Starboy is usually the puppy going after Dreamgirl. And Dreamgirl is the one that is off doing the responsible thing. It almost felt like the two characters switched, because she's doing nothing but crying, nothing but bemoaning the situation, waiting for the inevitable end. And Starboy is the one that's, hey, we have to help my people. Hey, we have to go look for Atmos because they want us to, and we have to do it quickly. And he says in a couple pages here, so on page 14, as they're searching for Atmos, and it's leading to people at ports, and because he might have taken a ship, like all this crazy stuff. They get no information at this one place, and Dawnstar, again, she can't trace him on the world. And Starboy says, we have to. Somehow, we have to. There's a little bit of urgency there, right? Okay. Then, even on page 3, early on, when they're like, that point you said about Invisible Kid. This is a simple truth. Surely our powers are needed more elsewhere. And he's like, sorry, but I told you, it's hard. It's hard to, I can't turn. There's something going on with Starboy. You can't be the boyfriend of a precog and not sense what may or may not happen. I almost get the feeling that the minute he gets called to Xanthu and realizes that Atmos is not there, he knows what's going to happen.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay.
Even though later when he's with the parents, he's kind of surprised by the notion that, oh, the Tribune wants to speak to me and me by myself. He's sort of shocked by that. And then he gets in front of the Tribune, and they're like, we understand you couldn't find Atmos. The failure is not yours. This is page 26. It leaves a matter unfinished between us. And he says, what, Tribune? Tell me, and let me return to Earth with my comrades. And then that's when he says, look, there's got to be balance. You need to stay. You need to take the place of Atmos and be our champion. And then we never see him again. He doesn't say goodbye. We don't see him, right? There's even in his demeanor on 26, I'm reading into this, but that third panel is almost, he's saying, tell me and let me return to Earth with my comrades. But he's thinking, say it, because if you don't, I will leave. You know what I mean? And then they lay it on him and he's like, I knew it. I knew this was going to. There's,
or
go ahead.
Or as you were describing this point, the emphasis on the word return in that word balloon, could be he's emphasizing that as a show for his friends, right?
Yep.
Because he's already decided or guessed or whatever, and then it's not like I read it like, and let me return. Something like that.
Right.
I'm not an actor, so. But then you get that the final panel there on that page, right, where it's a reaction shot, but it's a weird one.
Yeah.
It's not surprise.
Right.
It's I can't decide if it's some sort of dismay, he's concern, or determination. It's like, okay, now it's official. I'm in champion mode now or something. I don't know.
Right. I mean, even way back on page 4, when they're done with their first mission and the Tribune's like, look, I'm glad to see you back, Starboy. You must have guessed your true mission here. You must find Atmos. And like Starboy's face is like, oh, damn it.
Yeah, he knows. This is.
I think he knows. He is the boyfriend of a precog. He knows how to read signs. And it's the reason why Dream Girl, I feel, is very much in the Starboy position, because she's very inactive as far as the story goes, because she's letting the events happen. And I feel like a Dream Girl that, it's a line from Legion 306, the Superboy Spotlight. He says to Wildfire, so the Legion election is going on in that issue, right? And it's against Ultra Boy and Dream Girl, and then there are write-ins for Element Lad because he just solved the whole fake Shrinking Violet plot and all that. And they keep saying, oh well, he's Element Lad's not going to win. He's just and then he actually does win at the end. And Starboy was worried that it was Dream Girl that would be the one that would win, and then again he would be put on the sidelines. Well, he says to Wildfire, so in the middle of their conversation about this election, Starboy says to Wildfire, no one ever wins anything Nora now wants. When I saw that, and you think about this, if she knew she could win against whatever the forces were that were going to separate them, don't you think she would have, tried to do something?
I was thinking the same thing. It's like every time we've seen, maybe not every time, but a lot of times we've seen Dream Girl, including her first appearance, she has a premonition and she manipulates events or directly gets involved to try to affect the outcome.
Right.
And yet she apparently doesn't even try to stop this from happening, to lose her boyfriend or whatever. So it's just like, that's interesting for her. Right. What's going on there? See, this is why I was like, this tension between Dream Girl and Starboy really has me interested as far as why this is happening. Why is she making this choice? And when you said earlier that, we're not going to get that. So disappointing.
We're not going to get it. Now, I mean, to speak to Dream Girl on the very last page, she says to Element Lad says, did you foresee this, Dream Girl? And she says, if I did, there was no reason to get everyone else upset. So, is she taking it for the team? She didn't want to, because then who knows what might have happened. Maybe something would have happened culturally with Xanthu, and as if they knew Starboy was going to have to leave the team, maybe they would have tried to find a way out of it. But she says she doesn't want everybody else to be upset, meaning that clearly she's upset by it.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've seen that already. But for her not to do anything, and Levitt's kind of saying, sort of writing Starboy off and allowing this relationship to fizzle, because if this is it, if this is all we get, it's, hey, I guess that's life. But it puts it puts Dream Girl in a very interesting position now. So
yeah, that's true.
Now suddenly, what is she going to be like from here on out?
Yes. Okay. Well, see, whether it's an exploration of the relationship or just a furthering of the characterizations, I don't care. Either way, I'm getting something more than what we've already been given with these characters. So I like this. I potentially like this direction, or that he's got these characters on.
What next? You want to talk about real quickly, Magnetic Kid, Polar Boy? Tell us that scene. Did anything come out of that, jump out for you on that?
Yeah, a couple of things. I thought it was interesting that, okay, especially considering how you and I have been kind of dismissive of Magnetic Kid in the past. I appreciate that he is, not just trying to be the kid brother of Cosmic Boy and a what do they call that, a legacy legionnaire. He's making an effort. He's trying to be better. He's trying to be a better hero and a better teammate, a better legionnaire, right? And I found it kind of telling. It says, and if that means pushing myself harder than our teachers drove us at the academy, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Is Bouncing Boy and Duo Damsel not doing their jobs or what? and then of course Polar Boy comes in doing something very similar to when he first appeared when he was going to join the Legion, right? What was it, Nuclear Boy, or I forget the character that
Energy Boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing the same exact thing, freezing a ball to make a point. Offers his experience. He's led a team. He has developed his teammates and his abilities to get to the point where he's at now. That's just, this is showing some, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Foreshadowing Polar Boy's potential leadership qualities, within the Legion. So I really like that. And then that 2-page scene is punctuated by this weird extreme close-up of Tellus's face, when he says, "We would appreciate your efforts, Polar Boy. Both of us wish to be the most powerful legionnaires we can be." And if you watch any kind of drama or soap opera, anytime somebody gets an extreme close-up, it usually doesn't mean a good thing. So I don't know if that's just, a misstep on the artist's part, or they just, LaRocque just felt like drawing Tellus's eyeballs or something. I don't know, but it came off odd to me. I don't know. How did you read that?
Yeah, I wrote that in my notes too, that it felt ominous, but I'm not certain why.
Yeah.
I could make connections to 5 years later, but in the immediacy, I'm like, does that have anything to do with the storyline that's coming up? I don't, he is a telepath after all.
Mm-hmm.
A very novice telepath that maybe, can a good villain get himself into Tellus, So yeah. I think you're right. I think it's just an accident or just an unclear ending to the scene. But I guess if something happens in the next 5 issues, we'll come back to it, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, given the prominence of that image, it just begs for us to focus on it as we go through. So
yeah, I wrote a lot of the things you said. I think this is Levitt's way of answering reader complaints that Magnetic Kid hasn't really been doing anything. but I appreciate the camaraderie among the three new recruits. Um, and also that there's a little spillover from the Fatal Five arc, that they realize they just went through quite an ordeal and that they want to be ready for the next time.
Hmm. Yeah,
Makes
yeah.
sense.
That's
Totally makes sense.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Especially, like you said, especially being the newer ones, they want to prove themselves to the
Right.
rest of the team. So
Right.
this totally makes sense.
And I guess we should address the whole reason why Atmos is lost, because we do get an answer later on in a way that first from Zendak, and then Element Lad confirms it. Like, not only have science police officers been disappearing, we've been dealing with that ever since issue 14 with the science police, 14, 15, or 16, maybe it was 16, with the baptism issue where the five new recruits went up against those mind controlled SPs.
Right.
But now suddenly, not only is it about science police, but suddenly heroes are disappearing. Atmos has disappeared, and we get that shot of Element Lad saying, "Okay, it's not as simple as Atmos. According to Chief Zendek, we may have a bigger problems on our hands." They're basically, okay. You're done with your mission. Now you got to come back because something is brewing. And I didn't remember this part about the upcoming Universo project storyline, but I'm anxious to see that all play out too. That there's a rumbling going on underneath. Not a mystery like the Sensor Girl stuff. We know. Well, I mean, we've seen Universo. We know that he's masquerading as the vice president of the United Planets, or no, planet Earth, right? Yeah, the president of Earth. Yeah. In one of the letter columns, no, it wasn't this issue. I thought, was it a previous issue where Levitt says, oh, we're going to get to that, soon. The whole Universo thing. They don't name it just yet, but we know it's coming. So. That's sort of like a rumbling story plot thread that we'll take a look at for a few more issues. Any other points? Any other smaller things with this issue, or anything we missed?
Can we just talk briefly about the scene at the Caller family apartment?
Okay.
Because I loved this 2 pages. Right, we get to see. And we so rarely get to see the families of the Legionnaires. So whenever we do, it's always, to me, it's always kind of a special thing, right? Although we do quite often have seen Colossal Boy's family, just because his mother was president of the United President of Earth or United Planet. I don't know which one.
President of Earth, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so we get to see the Callers, the scientists who, when he was a baby, almost died because of his actions, right? But you get the. I thought it was cool that Mrs. Caller, offers cookies. Would you like a cookie, Chameleon Boy? That is, do you eat cookies? So even though they're parents of a Legionnaire, they have very little. They appear to have very little knowledge of his teammates, and I just thought that was, I don't know. I just thought that was adorable. And then you get Don Store saying, "No, I prefer my foods unprocessed, and it's more natural that way." And the disappointing look on Starboy's mom's face. Oh, and we find out that Starboy's dad is a gamer, as we have seen Starboy in various issues playing the electronic Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. So I just really dug that. Just real brief familial moment in this adventure. So I just really like that.
Yeah, it kind of made me go, wait a minute. You mean food is still processed way in the 30th century? Like, wouldn't they have figured that out by now?
Well, just like in Star Trek, Peter, Captain Sisko prefers to make food the old-fashioned way.
That's true.
I'm sure there are people that do the same thing. Unprocessed. I mean, it's a cookie, for crying out loud.
There were a lot of good moments. Little Levitt's moment, when when some of the port workers recognize Starboy and they go
Yeah.
up to him, and not only is he a Legionnaire, but he's also their champion. So
Mm-hmm.
that was great. Um, the little crack about Sunboy on page 2. Oh, it's wobbling like Sunboy after a party. Basically, I was like, wow, they just called Sunboy a drunk. I was like, wow, I guess alcoholism not solved in the 30th century, I
Mhm.
guess.
And don't speaking of Sunboy, don't we see him with Colossal Boy in the gym in that scene between the
Oh
three
yeah,
new Legionnaires?
yeah,
They're jogging, and Sunboy seems to be coaching Colossal Boy. I don't know. So that coupled with the little dialogue bit that you just said, that paints a picture of a character when he's not even really there.
yeah.
And that's again, like you said, Levitt. It's little bits from Levitt's to give us a little bit more about these characters, and so he continues to do it. I continue to love it. I will say though, the investigative techniques of the Legionnaires in this issue, not that great. Invisible Kid, when they go to the port. Oh, so this is after the explosion. Oh yeah, okay. By the way, Atmos's apartment explodes, right? Because there's intruders. What a stupid way to prevent, I don't know, someone breaking into your place, blow it up. Very dramatic, but come on.
Unless
Just
it has something to do with
oh, yeah,
why he was stolen away.
that
But
you're
yeah.
you're right. You're right. But anyway, they encounter. No, this is later. I'm getting the two scenes confused. Or maybe I'm getting the characters confused because Chameleon Boy turns into one of the port workers and he's going to go investigate.
Mm-hmm.
Invisible Kid just kind of goes off to see. Oh no, that is the scene. Sorry. Too many scenes. Oh yeah. So it is the scene where they encounter the smugglers or whatever it is. Invisible Kid just decides, I'm just going to turn invisible and go in here and just kind of listen to conversations to see. And it just so happens he runs into these fellows that are doing not so good things, right? And then we get a little action scene because of it. But it's just like Chameleon Boy is there. Why isn't he in detective mode and actually looking for clues and following leads and stuff instead of them just kind of haphazardly going around Xanthu, just kind of encountering stuff? And I mean, it works out, but it's just like it's so sloppy, sloppy writing in this case.
Or again, just the whole mix of the
Okay,
teammates just doesn't gel.
yeah, but still, I mean, Chameleon Boy, given his experience, given his position as the leader of the espionage squad, it
Should be better than that.
it would make total sense that he would just kind of take over the investigation, even though it's Starboy's planet and it's his mission and whatever. Because Starboy is certainly not really doing anything. You had said something about taking a look at Atmos in that one scene where we see his hollow image. I don't know if you wanted to touch on that.
Just that it's so subtle the way we get introduced to him. He's talked about, and then we see an image that's not even a color image. It's just a hollow image of the character. And I think it speaks to Greg LaRoque's design sense that I think under another artist that might have gotten a little splashier of an image, but it didn't. It just the whole development of this character in this issue works because I'm intrigued. But it's so interesting that it's so subtle the way it is,
Yeah.
We get little things about the powers, Dawnstar recognizing that his home is designed for someone who with flight ability, which says something about her being very perceptive. But just that, when we do see him, there's no color to it. And it's like, well, who is this character? So yeah, it really was just as simple as that. It's a very interesting way to introduce a character.
Unusual.
Yeah.
By kicking in superhero comics.
Yeah, and by kicking off a member of a, a well-liked member of a team for a character we don't even get to see speak on the page,
Yeah,
at least not
yeah.
yet, you know.
Hmm.
So yeah, real fascinating.
And since you mentioned the Dawnstar thing, while they're at Atmos's place, Timberwolf picks up this uh, weight that is huge.
Huge. I didn't realize he was this strong.
Timberwolf, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah. That's
yeah,
that. Yeah, I thought the same thing. It's like, wow, he really is super strong,
yeah.
and it also shows that Atmos has super strength too.
Gotta watch out for those Xanthuians. They if they get hit with any kind of potential power making ability, they could be quite powerful.
Well, yeah, it did, that does beg the question. How did Atmos get his abilities, and was it was the planet trying to create another Starboy? Did
Mm.
Starboy actually was he actually a champion of Xanthu? Is that
Yeah, yeah.
explicitly stated?
I mean, they made him a superhero, and in the original story, his parents said, "You're going to be a superhero, and you're going to fight crime," right? But then very quickly he gets sent to Superboy's time. But then later, he's a champion in that he goes to the Legion and they accept him right away. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I guess in that, yeah, it feels
It
like he
it
would
seems
have
like
that.
it's implied more than stated. So
Right.
I have there's no issue with that. It just you know uh what do the people of Xanth? I mean, you talked about that just real briefly, the council, the Xanthuian council, in that one scene that we're talking about, where Atmos appears, and they're one of the council members is very confrontational with the Tribune.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Tribune, the Tribune's position is under threat if he doesn't solve it and get either Atmos back, or something, so that the planet has a champion.
Right.
Um, it must be very important for the people of Xanthu to have a champion. And so what does that mean in terms of Atmos and how he came to be and how he came to become the champion and all that stuff? And like you said before, they have one champion. Why don't they have a team?
So
It's
yeah.
just all these questions I have now,
Right.
based on what little information we have.
Yeah. There's always some. So I like the notion of the colony worlds. I know that it's explored more in the Valor series from the '90s. But like Polar Boy is from a colony world, Starboy's from a colony world. There's something almost like there's a status to that. I'm not just from any planet. I'm from a colony world, and which is why I think you get the the family aristocracy, if you want to call it, on Xanthu, is because they can trace themselves all the way back to when they first even colonized the planet, which I assume means they colonized it from Earth, right? Um, in the Valor series, it was the notion that a whole bunch of people got powers and then they sent them out into space. So if you had a fire power, you went to that planet and you seeded it, and everybody has firepower. If you went to this planet, it's because you can all turn to stone, and that's where Stone Boy comes from. You know what I mean? So maybe something about this planet was different, right? It was, I don't know, their claim to fame is being the preeminent research center, I think it says here, for space or whatever. But they didn't get powers, they didn't get champions. Oh, but they got one, so they're holding on to that one forever and ever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it really, as you said, I just want to know more about Atmos. It's so interesting in the Legion title to have a character that's a superhero, but that is not a Legionnaire member,
Mm-hmm.
and one that resonates. Dev M is kind of like that, but not many others. You have like the Heroes of Lalor or the Substitute Heroes, but just a random sort of, here's one character floating around in the universe that is an actual superhero, not just a person who has powers. Do we get many of those?
Well, speaking of that, because they say in the story, in that scene with Chief Zendak, over a dozen heroes. Have we ever been introduced to a dozen heroes that are not Legionnaires?
Oh, I'm sure you could. Like I said, the Heroes of Lala, the Wanderers. Like, I don't know who they're talking about. Like, are they talking
Yeah.
about established ones, or are they just talking about? They could be. Look at all the people in the Legion Academy that just pop up. You're like, well, what's that character? What's that
That's
character?
true. That's true.
They're
Yeah.
clearly out there, but acting as a champion, as a superhero, or acting in a sort of like in the 20th century, you have Superman, you have Wonder Woman, you have Batman, but then you also have Booster Gold, and you have Firestorm, and you got all these other characters, solo characters who might belong to teams too. But that's what I think. That's why I'm so curious about the Wanderers, even though I know that title is terrible. I love the idea of the Wanderers, but
hmm
I've barely read any issues with them. And the series that does come out, I heard wasn't that great. So,
Mm.
um, I would love a 30th century book that was not a Legion of Superheroes title.
Yeah.
If Atmos got like a miniseries or a totally new character, that would be amazing. So, there was one letter from this issue. James F. wants real issues to infiltrate the Legion. And Levitz answered by saying, okay, it's a conversation that he has had with Karen Berger at the time that maybe the characters could use a little drama, for a lack of a better word. But what the writer wants, the letter writer, is saying they're too goody-goody. There's no problems, no arguments. And then he's like, have somebody addicted to drugs and have somebody. I was like, whoa, hey, slow down there. But
Wow.
I don't get that sense at all. I don't think this series to date. Now they're talking about up to issue 22. I don't think prior to that everything's been all rosy, and I think there's been a lot of times that we pointed out very negative feelings that they've had towards each other or about a situation, arguments, confrontations, some problems, some I was very surprised by that letter.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are your thoughts about it? Do you think that Legion is too goody-goody up to issue 22?
Oh God, no. I don't. I'm not sure what this person is really getting at. You never have bizarre or different story. What the hell does that mean?
I mean, Karate Kid died, and I don't know. I don't know what they're looking for.
Yeah, the Monel issue. I mean, that says a lot about mental health and drugs involved with that whole aspect. I don't know. I don't know what they want. That's not the Legion either. It's not the grim and gritty Legion. That comes later, as far as I understand. So, it's not appropriate. Not every book has to have, this dark story, these dark storylines and characters going off the deep ends all the time. Yeah. Or yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think we've pointed out quite a number of times too, where the Legion has been elitist and has been, a little too high on their horse in these conversations. They have personality kinks. They have personality things that are not always,
they're just
heroic
not,
or whatever.
They're just not central to the particular story is all. Right, they're personality aspects.
Right.
Which to me makes them much more three-dimensional than all of a sudden we're focused on this one character's thing, whatever that thing, his or her issue of de jour, and exploring that for an issue. I prefer the more subtle. To me, it is more realistic already, because you and I don't have these dark problems that suddenly emerge that we have to, our friends and family have to deal with, in a typical TV plot that I've seen a bajillion times.
Right. But I think you brought it up in a previous issue, and in our next segment, it was in my notes. Researching for something we're going to do in the next segment, I read the first appearances of Shadow Lass, where she had a crush on Brainiac 5. Mm-hmm. And then you go back, I think you mentioned, you go back to that scene where she was checking on Brainy because he was being so obsessed with Sensor Girl. and and there was like we were questioning, oh, why Shadow? Well, there you go. Like, there's Paul Levitz, like, whether consciously or subconsciously going, oh, right, Shadowless once had a crush on Brainiac 5. So, of course, she would be the one to, like, go, maybe I should check up on him,
Mm-hmm.
So, it's those little things that play out, as you said, not as part of the A plot, but in all these smaller plots that speak to, in very many ways, not to go Spock on it, but they're very human, right? Even though they would go, oh, that's an insult. Don't call me human. But it gives us something to relate to them with. So, yeah. All right, let's finish out this episode with a look at the Legion of superheroes in other DC comics at this time in August of 1986, starting with, as always, Who's Who, issue number 21, where we can take a look at Shrinking Violet, Starboy, funnily enough, right? Starfinger, and possibly even the Space Museum.
I wondered if we were going to talk about that.
For its tiny connection to the Legion later. All right, so why don't we just start? Shrinking Violet, as drawn by Jaime Hernandez, just like Phantom Girl was.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Makes me wonder if they were a Legion fan, or if DC was just good about trying to, get some indie artists of the day.
Could you imagine if they had developed some sort of miniseries or something? With Jaime Hernandez doing these characters,
some off the wall, very personal, maybe some slice of life, but with some. I mean, she looks a little like, I don't know which character, if it's Maggie or Hopi, but the one down where she's punching. Yep.
I could see the resemblance there.
So what do you think of Shrinking Violet? Did you learn anything?
Yeah, actually. I did not realize she was rejected for membership at first, according to this. Maybe I read that and just forgot about it, but it seemed like it was a new thing to me. And then it says, this I always like it when Who's Who takes some liberties, some editorial liberties, by stating she frequently seems alienated from her teammates. And my first thought was, yeah, she has had this personality shift because of what has happened to her, and we've talked about that before. But have we actually seen that in play, that she seems alienated from her teammates? Have there been comments? I couldn't think of anything directly.
I think maybe in the sense that even if she's standing in a room, she's going to be the one that's going to throw out like a dissenting opinion, or she's going to be she might be standing near people, but she's not necessarily part of a clique.
Okay.
Think of Ultra Boy, Phantom Girl, Mon-El, and Shadow Lass, right? Now, until she gets Lightning Lass on her side, she's not part of that. Like, I actually thought it was interesting because, if you think about it, it's a really interesting reversal. When she was the true Shrinking Violet and shy, and they like to call them wallflowers. Well, now in some ways she's still that wallflower, but she means it. It's almost like she's watching, or she's purposely pulling away, as opposed to pulling away because she just doesn't have the personality. It's an interesting reversal. On the character.
She's kind of like the wallflower that has a bite.
Yeah. In this instance, she's not a shrinking, but she's more like a Venus flytrap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I also wondered about that, because when she first appeared, Action Comics 276, Supergirl's Three Girlfriends, if she was already a Legion member by that point, was that a story element that was put in later? I'm ignorant to a lot of those early stories, so
Hmm.
I don't know if that was something. Maybe she had an origin later that detailed all of that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, they often retconned these characters' appearances and our first appearances or when they joined the Legion.
right. Well, and then kind of like what I was talking about with Starboy, he was the seventh one to physically appear, but he's the 13th member because there's always those characters that you see from the back in those early
Yeah.
appearances. And there's some confusion. Did Superboy join the Legion first or did Supergirl? And how does that order play with things? So apparently, in the list of important issues, Action Comics 276 is very important because it's also the first appearance of Phantom Girl, Triplicate Girl, Bouncing Boy, Brainiac 5, and Sunboy. So it's like, wow, that's a big load of characters.
I need to go read that issue then.
Yeah.
I mean, I flipped through it before. I just don't remember any of the details.
I wrote here it's probably within the Legion's first 10 appearances. Yeah, I just thought it was a interesting panel. It's so interesting that her costume is very just kind of normal, just
Hmm.
not much to it. Um,
And reminiscent of her original
mhm.
costume, which we kind of see in one of the images on the page.
I love that shot of her younger there.
Hmm.
You know, yeah, Salu Digby. I've always wanted her to be a descendant of Ralph Dibny. Just because their names were kind of close. Yeah, I can't say I've learned much. I love that she's short. She's only 5'2". That's great. 95 pounds. That seems a little thin. Um, yeah, I don't have much. I don't have much. I'm not a fan of her logo. I wish it was something better. But the image is great. The image of her is great.
Hmm.
Yeah. Let's jump to Starboy. Again, Who's Who coming right into play with the Legion issue that we're reading and featuring Starboy. And we just read an issue and we just talked way long about Starboy. So
Yeah, that's right.
anything, and this is by Greg LaRocque and Joe Rubenstein. Anything you took from this?
So, okay. Some of this is going to might be rehash of what we talked about. So it says in here, it says the environment gave him density casting powers, but also says induced mass from the stars. And so I was like, what are we missing here? How does this work? So anyway, um, I already mentioned how, because they talk about here how he, there was a story about how he lost his Superman, or sorry, Superboy superpowers. But that was, I found out later after I made these notes, was more detailed in that issue 306.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was interesting, apropos of really nothing, but the combat training, we mentioned that a few times, in different results, it says, which is, I think that's a new phrase for any of these combat training situations. It's usually how do they usually or normally say it?
With something like with not very high marks or
Yeah,
yeah,
not
something along.
yeah, not distinguished or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah,
but in different results. It seems like a weird way to put it. It's like maybe the writers got bored of saying the same thing over and over. I don't know.
yeah. He's awfully
But
short. He's only 5'8".
5'8", yeah,
I mean,
160.
I'm saying short. That's my height. He's got to be more than 160. I'm 5'8", and I'm trying to. I'm above 160.
Yeah,
And he's a muscly dude.
I tend to think the people who apply these weights to these superheroes shed off like 20 pounds just because. I don't know.
Or because their office, they're working in DC Comics office behind desks and they're thin as rails back in the 80s because nobody was eating.
And
You
doing
know.
cocaine.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
It's an 80s trope, folks. That's all.
I know. I got it. I'm with you. Is that what all that sprinkly stuff all over his costume is?
We haven't really talked about his costume other than in relation to his powers, but what a great design.
Yeah.
As an artist, if I had to draw this, I would hate it.
Yeah.
It's black and white, But you got to throw in those little white dots and sometimes the sparkling stars. But God, I love this costume. I think it's one
Yeah.
of the better Legion costumes.
Well, that cover of 306, Legion 3, the spotlight on him is just so beautiful. He's up against the star background. It's by
Mm-hmm.
Giffen and Malstead, and he's out in space. It looks fantastic. I mean, it's the things you can do with like negative space and all that.
Yeah,
Like,
it's almost like you could see through his costume to the stars,
just
right?
like Atmos.
Yes,
Just
I was
like
just
Atmos.
gonna say,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yep. That character is more well thought out than I originally gave credit for. I love in the image that Dream Girl and Starboy look like they're fighting, which is like
Uh-huh.
just reminiscent of the story. It's like, wow, they really are spot on with what's going on, even if they don't mention it in the entry.
Well, but it says the great love of Starboy's life has been Dream Girl, and yet what they show is not a lovely interaction
Yeah.
or a loving interaction.
And we've talked about this. It just seems like his role was to always leave the Legion, whether it was because of his injury, killing that suitor for Dream Girl, having to replace the champion of Xanthu. I mean, boy, he really is just designed not to be a member.
Well, I hope it's not for very long.
Don't
Spoilers, Peter.
don't get your
Spoilers.
hopes up. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what's gonna happen. Starfinger. Wait. Starboy's logo. Yeah, looks just like the logo from 306. So that's cool. It's standard, nothing amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's only
Well,
so many things you can do with the word star and boy, I guess.
and speaking of logos, Starfingers.
Starfinger. This one by names that I meant to look up and didn't. Martin King and Del Barris. I'm not familiar with those names.
So yeah, especially King. Del Barris, I recall, but I could not name anything that Mr. Barris has worked on.
I have no, short of his little appearance in the Curse annual, and in this is another character that is going to show up immediately with the next issue of the Legion book that we're reading. I don't have any history with this character, so Starfinger to me, even though there's not much to learn, he seems like he's a coward more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And his costume's terrible.
Yeah, it looks more like a
Like
a
Black
carapace. Yeah, Black Manta. Yeah, there you go. That's exactly what it looks like.
But a cheap version of Black
Yeah,
Manta.
yeah. I don't know how this Legion villain, has ever stood the test of time. Why they keep bringing this character back? I don't think he's made many appearances in the Legion history, but I would think after that first appearance, or maybe his second, because Lightning Lad is technically Starfinger, the first Starfinger.
Yeah, right.
Because of Dr. Lars Hanscom's manipulations, right?
Right.
But then he takes on the persona himself, and that's where I don't know anything about this character. I'm sure I read at one point the first appearance of Starfinger and the reveal of Lightning Lad, but I haven't read anything else beyond that. And then, of course, like you said, in the character's appearance in the Curse annual. So,
and we're about ready to get a new one anyway. So,
that's right.
Yeah.
Whoever that is, right?
Yeah, I know he shows up in several issues coming, here and there throughout the next couple of years. But I don't remember and I don't know. So,
and I don't really care because
yeah,
he's such a forgettable villain.
The greatest Starfinger appearance is in the Legion cartoon, season 1, episode 10, called "The Substitutes." Have you seen that episode?
I think I have. I'm sure I have.
He is insane in that episode, Starfinger.
Huh.
He's almost like a German. I don't know. Like what's the whole SNL thing? The now we dance, the sprockets or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Right. He's kind of like that, like the
Oh,
Mike
really?
Myers character. Yeah, he
Hmm.
does a split at one point and fires his powers. He's like, it's almost, it's. I have to watch it again, but it made me do nothing but laugh the entire episode. So
Oh, I'll have to go rewatch that, or
yeah,
maybe watch it. I don't, whichever it is.
yeah. So it's season one, episode 10, Substitute. Brilliant, brilliant. I'm hoping that's we get a taste of that in the stories to come because then that'll make me love the character. But
Oh, okay, yeah.
yeah, but for here, I mean, he really just feels like I don't know. They call him a poor combatant. He has no real powers. You think he would be like some futuristic Mandarin with the 10 rings or something. His name's Starfinger after all, but
Mm.
yeah, no.
See, there you go. You've already made the character a bajillion times better by that by that comparison. So if only they had done that. Yeah, it's just like the image on here below his or in between his legs where he's shooting at the Legionnaires and they have these shields to protect them from whatever the blasts are. It's like this guy is nothing. Why? How are they even being slowed down by this guy? So anyway,
Yeah. And then lastly, the Space Museum. I really only read it because it has connection to Booster Gold, who was a night watchman at the museum, and then that's where he finds the all of his equipment to become Booster Gold and then come back to our century. And then
mm-hmm.
obviously the Space Museum showed up in Legion of Superheroes Millennium by Bendis. But outside of that, one of those classic 50s sci-fi DC things where a father would take his son into the Space Museum, and then that's how that would kick off a story,
Yeah.
for the rest of the comic. And I think there was in later Booster Gold issues, it was in Booster Gold in like the 2000s, it was tied in that Booster was the young kid that was taken to the Space Museum. But I'd have to read that again if they kind of retcon that. It was either Booster or Tommy Tomorrow, but I think it was Booster. I think I didn't research that, so somebody will correct me, no doubt. But if not, we'll find out along the way.
And just for completeness sake, the art for this is by Carmine Infantino and Mike DiCarlo.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What do you think of the logo, though? Since we talked about the others,
it's weird. It almost is it supposed to evoke like a NASA thing? Maybe
I think
Kinda?
maybe
Yeah.
It's weird.
The
It
greatest.
doesn't match with the Space Museum name on the building either. So
Right. See, and I'm a fan of space museums, Star Labs. Anything that is in the DC universe that is shared among the superheroes.
Yeah, yeah.
Star Labs. There's one in New York. There's one in Chicago. Like I love that. So I have a fondness for those kind of things. Even in Marvel, like Project Pegasus, and they have the floating star core that floats around the sun to do research on the sun. Love all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The greatest Space Museum story is the Twilight 3 issues by Howard Chaykin and Jose Luis Garcia Lopez that is centered around all of DC's 50s, 60s sci-fi concepts. And then the Space Museum does play prominently within that story. Fantastic use, fantastic story. Garcia Lopez artwork. I own it's only 3 issues, and I think I own 3 copies of each issue plus the trade.
Oh, wow.
Every time I see it in the back issue bins, I'm like, oh, buying it. No, I should really give them away or something, but I love that story.
I know you do because you've talked about it before on your show, and I bought it because how much you gushed about it.
Oh, cool.
And it's like, well, I like you, I like those 50s style stories, and Garcia Lopez art is always wonderful. So I had to get it, and so I think I bought it off eBay many years ago.
Did you read it?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. I need to go back and read it again because there's a lot of stuff in there, because it's more like an Elseworlds or retelling or reimagining of that all those sci-fi space concepts from 1950s, 1960s DC Comics.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of stuff I'm just not familiar with. I recognize names and whatnot, but I certainly have not gotten everything out of it that I think I could if I do some more research. And now that I have, access to some of the back catalog, maybe I can fill in some of those gaps.
That's been on my list for a long time, to go back and read, all those DC sci-fi stuff. But you're talking, years of Adam Strange and Captain Comet and Mystery in Space and the Planeteers and Tommy Tomorrow and Space Ranger, Space Cabbie. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And it's not always going to be good, but, I'm the Star Rovers and Space Ranger. Oh my God, there's so many of them. So yeah, but it's a fascinating part of DC's lore. So yeah, that's a great space museum. If you want to see the Space Museum, go check it out there. That's it for Who's Who. Yes, cover by Ernie Colon, who has done some Legion stuff. In keeping with this notion of digging into Who's Who and origins and just trying to learn a little bit more about the characters, DC at this time is also putting out Volume 2 of a title called Secret Origins. There was a Volume 1 in the 70s. And at this time in August, it's up to issue 8, and we get our first Legion origin story. So we are also going to continue anytime a Legionnaire pops up in Secret Origins to talk about it, because it's a great way to kind of dig in. These are all new stories based on older stories or based on ideas, but they're not retellings. A lot of these are, if they are retellings, especially with so Secret Origins was a Roy Thomas driven title, because he wanted to map out the origins of the Earth 2 characters in order that they were published. So he starts with issue 1 with Superman, and I think issue 2 is Blue Beetle or Captain Marvel, and then the next one is Captain Marvel or Blue Beetle, and et cetera, et cetera. So he wrote in the letter column that I want to go through their origins in the order that they appeared chronologically in publication. Well, then about 4 or 5 issues in, they decide to do double issues, not only Golden Age stories, and they were flipping back and forth between Golden Age characters and modern characters. Then they decided to just put it all in every issue. One Golden Age, one modern, quote unquote. Like the Superman origin in issue 1 is heavily taken from Action Comics #1, but it's meant to be about the Earth 2 Superman, which was a concept that was developed later. So Roy Thomas is handling all the Earth 2 stuff, and then they're like, okay, let's throw in some other ones. So this is where we get Shadowlast by Paul Levitz and Tom Mandrake and company. But we will now focus anytime a Legionnaire pops up here, because it's a great way to kind of talk some more Legion stuff and learn about a hero, So Shadowlast, Secret Origins number 8.
Yeah, this was an issue. I swear, Peter, I had it in my collection, and then I went to go find it, and it's not there. So I must have given it away many years ago.
Oh no, I got it.
So yeah, see, and so I had to read it online through the DC Universe Infinite app. But yeah, this was the point at which we are introduced to Shadowlast in continuity in Legion stories is like 2 pages at the end of this, and the rest of it is really cut from whole cloth, new information as far as I understand about her origin. And what I was struck by was this does not seem like the Tasmia Malor that we see either when she was originally introduced, nor the one that we are more familiar with in current storylines, current comic books. So it's very interesting to see Paul Levitz, who has engineered much of the modern, quote unquote, modern version of Shadowlast, go back and really show us this young girl who is related to the planetary, or not planetary, not at this point, but the champion of is it the prairie people or the plains people? I forget.
Mm-hmm.
One of those two, where but he's protected. Well, I guess in a sense he's his ancestor. Well, that's just it. There's a whole lot of ancestor stuff in this, and so we get this tale about the girl who becomes Shadowlass and her grandfather, and then the ghost of her grandfather tells her and her cousin Grev about his ancestor who first acquired the shadow powers. Anyway, so there's a long line, a history of uh, a champion who protected his or her people, and then the powers are passed down genetically. So it's a very direct connection, and so we get a lot of details involving that. So I thought that was really interesting way to show Shadowlass's origin. Something completely new,
and very interesting compared to all the champion stuff we've been talking with Starboy. That it has come out in the same month. This is by Paul Levitz, Tom Mandrake, artist, John Workman, letterer, Carl Gafford, colorist, no stranger to the Legion, and Robert Greenberger, editor for this series. I agree. I thought Paul Levitz, he plugged Secret Origins 8 in issue 28 that we just read. And he said, go read it. It's about Shadowlass, and it's a different kind of Legion story. I don't know if it's, I almost expected a little more difference, but maybe, I'm not quite sure why he said it was that different from, I think we've seen stories like this before, more or less, but there was a quality to it that felt very, like an oral story, like a, I don't want to say fairy tale, but something that was passed on. That is something that's part of their culture on Talok 8. They even talk about this idea of, our people have a really strong sense of memory. And there was that character in the Tales Legion.
Yes, that's right.
Lady Memory, or whatever the heck her name was. I don't remember. But I liked it. It didn't necessarily fill in. It's not like I had a lot of questions about Shadowlass's origin. It almost made me, I wondered why they chose Shadowlass and not Cosmic Boy right away, or Wildfire. But they've told Wildfire's story a lot already. Under a Steve Lido cover with Shadowlass and Dollman, who was the second part of this story. Beautiful. I love Shadowlass. I love the design, and she's great. She can do no wrong. We have seen some of that lineage play out, like in the Great Darkness saga, when Darkseid brings in Lydia Maller, I think it is.
Yeah.
Who we will then see in the Legion title, Legion, the acronym, later. So, there is this really long lineage with this character that I love. And it was kind of nice to see some of the early champions, and one of them is even wearing the same, I assume it's an S, the little symbol on her costume.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Typical kind of story. We need a champion. Let's go send out this little kid. She'll save us. Sure, of course. Let's go put her in the desert. She's got the elf ears. I don't know why she's wearing a fedora or whatever that is. That big sort of.
That seems to me that's Tom Mandrake play here.
Yeah. And then, like you said,
but it still looks cool. Her outfit as she journeys outside the city walls there. I don't know. I like it.
Okay. She meets Grev just randomly, right? Like out of nowhere, she has a cousin.
Right. Yeah.
I did think it was interesting early on when they were first introducing Tasmia, they were like, she is the she's the granddaughter, or perhaps great niece. She was not sure. So that made me wonder, in her early appearances, did they confuse that, right? And Levitz is like, let me just address that, And then she comes out with her once they meet the ancestors. That was kind of a fun scene. She comes out with her costume from her first appearance, because I went back and read her first two appearances featuring the return of the Fatal Five from Adventure Comics 365, 366, and she has that same early design
Mm-hmm.
with the crisscross at the neck and the short hair, um, and she helps the Legionnaires, and she has her shadow casting powers, and yeah. So I mean, but not sure if I learned much outside of just the grandfather connection between her and Grev.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like he was the one primed to be the champion, but then he just wasn't old enough. And then so she decides, so they make it her. Couple appearances from like Ambassador Relnick, right? He's a Legion supporting character that pops up every now and then. That was kind of nice.
Yeah, I actually like that little bit, because she becomes this champion, and then shortly, I don't know how much time has passed, but Talok 8 becomes part of the United Planets, right? And so then,
Mm-hmm.
as the, I guess now, planetary champion, she is a representative of the planet. So she goes to this UP trade talks or something, right? And that's
Yeah.
when Relnick comes in and says, "Hey, by the way, we've lost contact with your planet." And then that's where we get the actual introduction of Shadowless in Legion mythos.
Yeah. It's great. It's like filling in those gaps that again, I wasn't answering. I wasn't asking those questions, but I was like, okay, he's hitting. I think it even said that in her first appearance in Adventure Comics, where they talked about Talok being along many trade routes, so that, that's a nice little connection there. And just goes to show, like, how crazy is the 30th century? They got all these champions, but they're all under 18. They're all babies, right?
That's right.
You can't be a Legionnaire if you're 18 or older. So it's
Mm.
like, she's a kid, Starboy's a kid. They're all babies, and yet they are tasked with representing, which is what this story is saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are a champion. You're 14. Go be a champion. Like, whoa. So
Parental supervision is certainly a different thing in the 30th century.
yeah, I mean, it really, Mark Wade was right. Eat it, Grandpa. Like, geez, like, wow. Okay, boomer, right? That's what it is now. Yeah. I don't know. I didn't really take much notes on it. I just sort of enjoyed the story.
Actually, my one note on this was the planetary champion versus the GF, and I have no idea what GF stands for. I don't know if it's a typo or so. Lesson learned: don't write in initialisms, Eric.
Because the people that she needs to find are the Yakamahor, the mountain people. Again, I think that also plays out in that whole Lady Memory Tales issue.
I had forgotten about that, and yeah, that was yeah, they play along, like you said, they play a lot with the whole idea of ancestral memory and whatnot, and that connection. So,
which I love that notion of racial memory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could make a story out of. I think even Levitz referenced it in one of the. It was GF grandfather.
Probably.
Maybe.
Not sure why I wrote that either way.
But Levitz often talked about, there could be real interesting stories with the development of the United Planets, and I guess you could say Millennium is kind of like that, but the one by Bendis. But I think there could be deeper explorations. You have anything else to say about that?
No.
Okay. I don't know what comes next. We'll just wait to see whenever the next Legion one pops up. And then we only have two more things, folks, and then we're almost done. Just like we did with Crisis, we are going to take a look at DC's next event in relation to the Legion, and that is Legends. Legends #1. Now, do you have a copy of this, or did you have to
I do.
also? Okay.
I bought it when it was published.
So did I, and then I wound up selling it for
Ooh,
some reason years later. I don't know why. Especially me, of all people. I love my events, and
I know, right? And this,
yeah.
considering this was supposed to be Crisis 2.
Well, supposed to be. Definitely was not.
No, no, no. But that, as far as I understand, that was the origin of this whole
Right.
event. Was, hey, let's do a Crisis 2. What do you want
Right.
to do?
It was a Crisis sequel. It was called Crisis on Captive Earth, and then it was retitled Crisis of the Soul by a pitch
Oh, that's
from
right.
Paul Levitz.
Mm,
Was supposed to be drawn by Jerry Ordway. Um, got a lot of pushback from editors of other DC titles because they didn't want to go through 12 issues of another crossover.
mm,
Work was being done on the story, and in the meantime, DC was bringing over Mike Gold and in turn John Ostrander from First Comics,
mm.
and they were bringing them over, and then they were enticing them with this idea of do an event which could then possibly spin off into other titles, which is something that did happen with Legends. So Mike Gold, John Ostrander started to work on Legends. They totally stopped the other one, and Jerry Ordway was not happy about,
Mm.
you know, because they were going to offer him the art, and he was like, I just put all this work in over here. I ain't doing it. So that's where they brought in John Byrne. They brought in Carl Kiesel from New Talent Showcase. They started to get their creative team. They started to get the idea. Unlike Crisis, they put the big bad front and center with it being Darkseid. They knew they wanted to tell a little bit more of a personal story as opposed to a cosmic story. And they also wanted to shrink it down to 6 issues instead of 12. And that's where we get the short version of how we get Legends.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, I actually didn't know a lot of that. So
yeah.
thank you.
Sure. You know, me and the Crisis Kid, right? Like just and there's been a bunch of back issue magazine articles about the sequel to Crisis, so I'm sure I'm missing a whole bunch of detail. So like the Crisis, we're going to talk about this as it comes out every month. You know, maybe thoughts about the issue, but really about the Legion participation in it. But why don't you just do you want to read the credit box and just just maybe some thoughts about, I don't know if you read it again or if you read just the Legion stuff.
It's the latter actually, but I did,
Okay.
I did flip through it because there's a lot of Titans related
Yeah.
stuff. So that was a big draw for me when this came out. But this was, it says here, John Ostrander is the plotter, Len Wein scripter, John Byrne penciler, Carl Kiesel inker, Steve Haney, a name I did not recognize even after all these years, as letterer, and Tom Zucco colorist, with Mike Gold as editor.
Yeah, Legends, Darkseid gets it up his butt that he wants to muck around with the with the legends of the DC universe, and that's what we see through the machinations of creating a character called Brimstone, and then also giving us a character called G. Gordon Godfrey, which is a new god, Glorious Godfrey, very much in the vein of like a news personality or TV personality that goes on the air and just tries to rail against everything. You could pick 20 people today. You could pick 100 people today that do the same thing. Bill O'Reilly and, whoever else, whatever. And that's really it. Like it's just Darkseid putting himself in the middle of DC's heroes here in this post-crisis universe. And one of those heroes is Cosmic Boy, who just happens to be visiting the 20th century, as we have seen from Legion of Superheroes issue number 23, that he is visiting 1986 with Night Girl, his girlfriend, and he's just hanging out in a diner wearing his costume.
Yeah. with a trench coat.
with a trench coat. Even though he left the 30th century not in costume. It's like,
Oh,
okay.
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And he calls himself, where is it? An amateur historian, right? Why is he wearing his costume?
I don't know.
Yeah, they're just not thinking about this stuff. But
Right.
it makes it easy for him to rip off that trench coat and be in costume as he engages Brimstone. So, there you go, comics.
Yeah. And we get a lot of Legion mentions. He looks at this character Brimstone, who, if you've ever seen the Justice League cartoon, Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, Brimstone is a character in one of the episodes. He's this giant flame thing. It looks like he's spawned from hell. And he says, "It dwarfs Validus. It makes the infinite man seem like an infant."
I know. I was like, in my notes, he was like name dropping.
Yeah, right.
these. You even mentions Tacron Galtos,
Mm-hmm.
which at this point in Legion timeline has been replaced by something else, right?
Labyrinth. Yeah, it got
Yeah,
destroyed.
yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember the name of it, but yeah.
But there is a Tacron Galtos in the 20th century, because in the Justice League of America story that's running around this time, Despero was imprisoned on Tacron Galtos.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah, so I think it's either a concept they just put in the 80s, or there might be an even earlier Justice League story where it shows up as well.
Well, and Kaz, being an amateur historian, would know this.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe. I guess. Unless they wrote it so early and they forgot that they destroyed it in the Crisis.
Yeah.
So he just basically tries to go up against this Brimstone character who's screaming about, "I'm going to kill all the false gods. I serve an angry god," meaning Darkseid. And doesn't work. He kind of gets his ass handed to him, right?
Oh, yeah, big time.
Yeah, I don't know if I was a little surprised by that, or maybe it shows. I know there's this whole thing about heat and magnetism, right? Like, I think you can disrupt magnetism with heat.
Well, I think it's actually come up in the Legion title itself, where the heat weakens it. So or maybe it was with Magnetic Kid. But anyway, I think we definitely have seen it.
Okay.
In the Legion book, so that makes sense. But it's not explicit here. It's just that, he has a very limited palette, as it were, with his ability, and he's got this giant flaming demigod thing that he has to defeat. So
right.
It's not too far from, or not too far out of line for him to not be able to take it on by himself.
Yeah.
But then you get a nice two-page spread of the Justice League of America showing up. So,
which I think. Go ahead.
I was going to say that it's the Detroit Justice League.
Yeah. Which is ultimately, I think, a way to connect the two, right? I'm going to have Cosmic Boy get the beat down so that here comes the Justice League. It is the 20th century after all, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be a 20th century team that helps defeat them, I guess.
Well, this whole thing, like you said, this being Darkseid's plot to discredit the legends, right, on Earth, and yet there's no Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman in here. It's these minor heroes plus the Detroit Justice League. in comparison.
Well, and to be fair, Man of Steel is going on at the same time as this. Mm-hmm. It's so odd. It's so weird, this post-crisis stuff, because Byrne has yet to release Superman #1. I think it comes out in the next month.
Okay.
So Superman Action, Adventures of Superman, they're not out yet. It's still Man of Steel. They got like 2 more issues to go. So not only are you going to reintroduce Superman, but you're going to put him in this series drawn by John Byrne, but he hasn't even been revealed to us as readers just yet.
Mm-hmm.
Not really. Just, a couple issues of Man of Steel. Same thing with Wonder Woman. She's going through a revamp. Perez's Wonder Woman hasn't come out yet. In fact, I think she shows up in Legends, are really close. It's like really close. If Wonder, I could look it up, but Wonder Woman #1 in Legends, her first, it's like almost
Is
the
it
same
okay?
month.
I was
Yeah.
thinking her first appearance post Crisis was in Legends, but yeah, I'm sure you're right.
Actually, I think it was in History of the DC Universe.
Well, that's true.
There was that beautiful shot of Paris, and it was like, oh my God, there she is. I'm gonna look it up right now. November of '86 was Wonder Woman #1, which means
Oh,
Legend
okay.
was up to #4.
Are you checking about publication date or cover date?
Publication date.
Okay.
Yeah. So they both, Legends 4 and Wonder Woman 1 came out at the same time.
Okay.
So very quickly after her first appearance, she shows up in Legends, because I think she shows up in #5 or 6. But so odd. That's why this miniseries is so weird, because it's meant to be firmly in the post-crisis DC universe, but it still hasn't gelled yet. It's still forming.
It's odd that they decided to go ahead with this at this time. Maybe the next year would have been a better choice given the situation that the company was in with its major characters.
No, I agree with that. Let's see, what other notes? Byrne artwork, especially in the '80s. I was there for it, you know.
Yeah, I remember quite enjoying this.
Yeah.
Like I said, it didn't hurt that Wally West and Garfield Logan were in the series as well.
And to be fair, the construction of this miniseries, the reasons why they were using the characters they were using is because all of these characters, almost every single one, if not every single one, was about ready to get their own title. Wally West would get his Flash title out of this. Earlier in this book, we get Rick Flag and Amanda Waller's first appearance, getting ready to start Suicide Squad, as written by John Ostrander. Cosmic Boy, his miniseries, is ready to be released. The Justice League Detroit are about ready to end, so that out of this miniseries we get a new Justice League. This is where, by the end of this 6 issues, the Justice League, the new Justice League, the Bwahaha Justice League, comes from.
Right.
Shazam gets a miniseries, Shazam: The New Beginning. And in many ways, you could even say, even though Firestorm's book is already out, John Ostrander is ready to write Firestorm in another month or two. Okay. So it's like, this book is nothing. It's so funny. People like to say Crisis had these ridiculous tie-ins and blah, blah, blah. This whole book is nothing but a tie-in, a promotion. It's just promotion. It's like no different than Superpowers when they're constantly doing like, or think of it in many ways, it's very much like the first Secret Wars. Here's a story that we have to decide to sell something. Yeah. That's what this is.
Yeah. Which I would say is, even then I was realizing this, and that's probably my biggest complaint, is that it's a platform to launch these other things. But the story itself, while some aspects of it are interesting, it doesn't quite work. Unlike, say, Crisis, which, while chaotic and bajillion characters and universes and whatnot, had a central line throughout the whole thing that I think really worked from beginning to end. And this one is just kind of, I don't know. It didn't feel like it was quite baked enough.
Yeah, it's not. It was. I think it's. Well, first, okay, the artwork is good. The story is, as told, is readable. Like, I don't feel like it's dated. I don't feel it's clunky. If I don't necessarily like the plot, that's different. The plot is very weak. And it in many ways, I have actually gained a new appreciation for Millennium over the many years.
Really?
And my appreciation of Legends has soured. I've always kind of not liked Legends. And I know Millennium gets, there's a lot of people who don't like Millennium for whatever reason, the whole weekly aspect, whatever. There are parts to Millennium that I can read and go, that is a fascinating, I love everything they're trying to say here. This whole idea of humanity on the verge of a new millennium, 1,000 years of whatever to become whatever. But then this larger exploration of the DC universe through the Manhunter agents, which to me, that's no different than like Secret Invasion with the Skrulls, you know, putting people, I mean, like it actually works had they used those things. And we're going to talk about that in another couple, you know, another year or so. So Legends is very easy to pick apart. It's very easy to see how, like you said, the base is very weak. I think the creative team is outstanding on a very weak premise. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see where the other issues play out, and we'll keep watch on Cosmic Boy. Eventually we'll do a Tales episode about his miniseries, but that won't be for another couple episodes.
I was going to ask you about that, what the time frame was for that.
I think we should hit that right before the Universo project.
Ooh, okay.
Because that is, it's the first issue of the Universo project, the last issue of Cosmic Boy come out at the same time. So I think we can just throw it in, like we'll wait for the Universo project and just go right to the Cosmic Boy thing, and then we'll jump in. So it's only like another 3-4 episodes. So and then we're there. I do love that shot of the Justice League Detroit. They are such a guilty pleasure of mine. I know there's a lot of people that aren't a fan of that team, but look at them. Byrne's shot of them, that's great.
Oh, yeah.
Height differences. Look how big Martian Manhunter is. Yeah. We're missing Aquaman and Zatanna, but so good. So good.
He ran out of room. He couldn't fit him in.
Yeah, I don't know where Zatanna is at this. She might have been off the team at this point. And Aquaman was about ready to get his own miniseries too, and he was off the team. So, but it's beautiful. I'm looking at it on the DC Universe app, so they've recolored it, but they didn't modernize the coloring, which is good. The only thing they did was they sort of, everything is flat. It's like a lot of flat coloring, which makes sense because it was 80s coloring. But you don't see like the pixelation, the little dots and all that. So, like you would in the original comic.
I don't know. I like the original.
so do I.
I don't mind the dated methods by which they colored things. So.
Agreed. I just hate when they take an 80s comic and they try to modernize the coloring with like intense shading and all, like, just no. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Make it flat colors. That's what it was drawn for. Just do that. So yeah, that's just a little tangent into, you know, more Cosmic Boy, more Legion stuff. We'll come back to that soon enough.
Did you notice in this issue there was an ad, a full page ad for the Legion of Superheroes Sourcebook 1?
I don't have that. They don't have the ads in.
Oh, you don't have the original issue?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like I said, I did, but I sold them.
Oh, okay. And then there was also another ad in here, a house ad for 1986 specials and annuals. And they feature the Tales of the Legion of Superheroes annual number 4, which is the Who Shot Laurel Kent issue that we've already covered.
Yep. Anything else for Legends?
No.
So the only other thing that we've been looking at is Superpowers Volume 3, because Tyr is in it. And that's pretty much all you need to know. This miniseries is dreadful. It is just like Legends, just designed to sell comics. So the whole thing is it does spin out of Superpowers number 2, Volume 2. Darkseid is a prisoner. Mr. Miracle and Orion are trying to make sure he stays a prisoner, but Calabac and Steppenwolf hire Tyr to release Darkseid. And the only reason they bring in this Legion villain, like we've talked about, is because they can sell him like a toy because he has a robotic arm. And that's perfect for toy making, right? You can shoot it off and it could do things. And it does talk in this series, which is which is a tier thing. You know, that's established that the arm talks.
Did the toy arm talk?
Oh, I don't know. That would be
I bet
great.
not.
No,
But
so then Tyr, in one of the issues, he gets Mr. Freeze to help free Darkseid, but he wants to use Mr. Freeze because apparently the cold will trap Darkseid's Omega beams, which is ridiculous. And in this issue, Darkseid has escaped to Earth, and he's all powerless. And he actually gets mugged. Darkseid gets mugged on Earth. By the way, this is by Paul Kupperberg. I don't know if they want their names out there. Carmine Infantino. Pablo Marcus is the inker. Albert de Guzman is letterer. Joe Orlando colorist. Barry Marks editor. Yeah, Darkseid gets mugged. Hysterical. He's trying to find on Earth a character named Kronar, who used to live on Apokolips. And apparently Kronar is giving powers to random people. That's where we get, again, more toys. Samurai, who joins the Justice League. Golden Pharaoh, who was a superpowers toy. And Darkseid is trying to restore his power, so he meets up with Kronar. Meanwhile, Tyr is just sort of hanging out and waiting for things to happen. He's with Desaad. Nothing is going on with them. They're like, why don't we do something? He's like, no, if we try to transport, Darkseid will know where we are. I have no idea why anybody is doing anything in this issue other than to show costumes and show vehicles that look like the toys, you know. And then eventually the rest of the issue doesn't involve Tyr. It's just the Justice League goes up against all these new characters that are perfect foils for them. For instance, Superman goes up against a kryptonite character. Plastic Man goes up against Boiling Point, who can melt plastic. Captain Marvel goes up against a Mountain Man. Wonder Woman goes up against Hercules. So forth and so on. And the superpowers are being defeated, and in comes Janus, son of Jupiter. And Wonder Woman's like, ooh, he looks cool. And she's almost like got a crush on him, and he's helping them defeat all these villains. And then at the end, you realize, oh, it's Darkseid. But they don't know it yet. And that's it. Like I said, Tyr is like in one scene, just hanging out, waiting to do whatever it is he's going to do. It's so weird. It's the mischaracterizations, especially with Darkseid, are phenomenal. They're just so huge and wrong.
Do you think, was Kupperberg just not familiar or given certain edicts to do X, Y, or Z, or just didn't care? Or?
I think it had to be familiar with, similar to the cartoon, the Galactic Guardians cartoon that was, I think, out at this point. They had to sell books, toys. It does have some connection to the previous superpowers, but without Jack Kirby, it doesn't have that thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that Kirby thing. You can tell why it was quickly forgettable and just not good. So
you have to think, though, if you were a New Gods fan back then at this time, where you've got two books, Legends and Superpowers, about ready to wind up, but you've got all this New Gods Darkseid stuff in two different titles at that time. It's got, regardless of the quality of one, or maybe both, it's probably pretty exciting for a fan of those characters.
Yeah, I mean, DC was, you could tell they didn't want to push the New God stuff right away. I think they wanted to figure out what they were going to do with their universe first, even though Darkseid shows up in Crisis and Desaad. But then once the new Earth is here, and you get Byrne coming over to Superman, because he also quickly brought in the New Gods in both Superman and Action.
That's right.
Because he's a Kirby disciple. He wanted to play with that universe. I can understand why they wanted to bring Darkseid to the forefront. He had been used already in the Great Darkness saga. He had been used in JLA in a JLA JSA team up. But to have him front and center as the big bad of the DC universe, it was one thing to do it in Superpowers because again, they knew that was kind of like a side thing. And in many ways, volume 1 and 2 of Superpowers, as I talked about before, is a continuation of the Kirby stuff and is a continuation of like Hunger Dogs. And I think you have to read it, even if it's not good. Like you have to kind of read those volumes. But this one, boy, it just goes way off. So maybe that's why they were like, oh, that's okay. Darkseid's going to be in Legends. He'll be in better hands there. And he does feel more like Darkseid in Legends than in this. He got mugged.
I know, that's just like, it reminds me of when Thanos had a helicopter with his name on it. That famous panel.
Thanos copter.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, I even though I did not read Superpowers #3 because I don't have the issue or have access to it, I did look it up to get a sense of what the story was about. So I knew that reveal about Janus. But the interesting thing, since we're talking about the larger DC tapestry, apparently the Superpowers / Super Friends stuff is all considered to be part of Earth 32. I think that was the one. So I did not realize that.
I guess that limited series or the Super Friends title in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess you could almost call it almost like a cartoon Earth. I don't know where the number comes from, 32, but does the Secret Society of Supervillains also tie into that? I can't remember. I'd have to check. But that's where we get the Global Guardians, and then eventually they get pushed into the regular DC continuity after Crisis. So, yeah, an odd little corner of the DC universe that I haven't really explored much, but I'd like to. Mm-hmm. I'd like to read those Super Friends comics.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, we talked about one of them with the Time Trapper stuff.
Oh, right.
Yeah, there was an odd reference to it. So weird. All right. I think we're done. I think that's enough. That was a chunky episode. But it's good. It's good.
Lots of good stuff, though.
Yeah. Who else is talking for an hour and a half about Starboy?
Get your Starboy fix here.
That's right. All right. So next episode will be Legion of Superheroes, covering Legion of Superheroes number 29. And I look forward to seeing what that issue is about and our discussion as always.
Isn't that a throwback issue where they go back into some Legion history?
No, we're gonna it's the Starfinger.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because in the next issue blurb it says something about a star.
Yeah, no star shall shine.
There it is.
So there you go. Okay.
Yeah. The new Starfinger. There it is. The fury of the all new Starfinger.
There we go. So see if he lives up to the previous incarnation.
It could only get better.
All right.
All right, Eric. Where can they reach you?
They can reach me at longboxreview@gmail.com. And Peter, where can they reach you?
Peter at thedailyrios.com. And as always, long live the Legion Project Podcast. All right, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.